For our June council meeting, I'm going to ask Councillor Rachel Sanson to open with a karakia, please.
Kia ora koutou, salamu alaikum. I'm just going to open with a very short excerpt from a poem, and then I've got a very short karakia. If I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a story. Dr. Rifat Alaria. And now I'm going to do a short karakia, which is to ask for calmness without conflict. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he huhonga, homie, huie, tai kie, kia ora.
A warm welcome to Councillor Paeta Taylor from our Youth Council. Wonderful to have with you today and welcome your input to our deliberations for today. Can I note that we have Councillor Matty Anderson is joining us by Zoom today. He's travelling in the North Island, and just asked council officers to keep an eye on when Matty wants it. Sometimes difficult for me on the screen to pick that up, or if anybody else notes Matty's contributions, welcome to he. Just in opening council's meetings, I did want to acknowledge the Chief Executive in successfully concluding in the last couple of weeks the significant agreement with Ngāti Koata on mountain biking. He does lots of things, but I think that was particularly challenging. We received a very large number of submissions from members of the Nelson community that were very nervous about the expiry of the access agreement for mountain biking. I think all of council sees a real opportunity for our community, both for our locals but also for visitors. I was particularly nervous in approaching the end of June that without an agreement it would be both very disruptive to the growth in mountain biking for our community, but also in terms of our relationship with Ngāti Koata. So congratulations to the Chief Executive on behalf of the Council and to the team, Andrew, for supporting the conclusion on that. The Council's also delegated to the Chief Executive finding a solution to the boat access issue at Delaware Bay. No pressure, Mr CE, but we wish you well equally in finding a solution to that issue. In respect of confirmation of the agenda, I have no changes other than just noting after the agenda was published, the additional public forum of the spectacle that will be presented to us this morning. We then come to the item of public forum, and I'd like to welcome the Tita Uhu Palestinian Solidarity Group for their presentation. This presentation, welcome and please come forward. My understanding is that Sari, Raja, Hannah and Rosie, feel free to come up to the table. This presentation arises as a consequence of a presentation at our previous council meeting from our Jewish community. I said on that occasion, and this is very much for the public that may be here or online, but that the interests of our council are very much in ensuring the safety and well-being of our own Nelson community. We are hesitant to get into the very difficult foreign affairs issues that rests with central government, but equally we are a council that wants to ensure freedom of expression, peaceful protest, and we also have a long heritage of which we are proud of, and that is being a voice for peace and global affairs. And so we welcome you this morning, but also ask you to respect those constraints that we also put on the Jewish community when they presented. So good morning and welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Tēnā koutou katoa, no whakatau aho, he Pākehā aho, ko sa taku tāne, ko Rosie Jones toko ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I grew up in Whakatū, Nelson. My husband is Palestinian. He grew up in a refugee camp in occupied Palestine. I have been a proud member of the Tito Ihu Palestine Solidarity Group since its inception in 2017. We are a branch of PSNA, Palestine Solidarity Network Aotearoa, which has active groups in 23 regions across the Motu. The vision of our group is to achieve human rights and self-determination for Palestinian people. Palestinians are affected by over 75 years of Zionist settler colonialism. The issues are about land, not religion. The conflation of speaking out against the actions of the State of Israel with anti-Semitism is a threat to the right to peaceful protest and freedom of speech. The last 8 months of genocide in Gaza have seen Tito Ihu Palestine Solidarity grow to over 500. Our group is diverse and welcoming and includes people from multiple ethnicities, faiths, ages, and genders. We spread awareness and pay action for people of Palestine through protests, community events, and film screenings. I would like to introduce Rajay, Hannah, and Sarai, who will speak to the current issues facing our group and their relevance to Council. Thank you.
Esteemed councillors, I'm Rajay Ashram. I'm a Palestinian man. My family organized from Nablus and the occupied West Bank. I have lived in New Zealand for 18 years, and I have lived in Nelson almost 2 years, along with my family and 4 children. Since October last year, my family and I have been subjected to enormous incidents of abuse, mainly carried out by Israeli supporters and Destiny Church members. The abuse has been mainly targeted towards myself and my family, but also extends to anyone else who associates with us. The abuse that has been targeted towards me has been posting posts with false information about me in the Nelson community page, which is spread widely. And I had taken a lot of time, for the police to take it down. This had been posted by one of said Israeli supporters. The untrue and misleading information by the Israeli supporters has caused me to lose my job more than once. The effect of their untrue information affects me and my career until now. Before my 18-year-old son had moved out of Nelson for university, he had been publicly harassed in his place of work by an Israeli man, part of the Jewish community. And my 15-year-old daughter in the same place of work has also been publicly harassed numerous times by Destiny Church members. We have evidence of these incidents by police records and camera footage at their work. The Israeli man supporters have spoken about these incidents to the public and had rewarded it what had happened to their benefit. I'm someone who is open and willing to have a civilized conversation with anyone, and it is very clear from Destiny Church and Israeli supporters who have approached me more than once for conversation, which is we had, and for a fair amount of time, and have a proof of the couple of this interaction with this individual, with the messages from before and after. This is just a proof that we have never targeted anyone, their religion, ethnicity. We are active members of Tito Ihu Palestinian Solidarity. We're protesting the genocide of our people. It's incredibly important to us. It's disappointing that my family now feeling unsafe as a result of speaking up. I acknowledge the Nelson City Council supporting our right to protest. I hope the council will continue and recognize and support Tito Ihu Palestinian Solidarity as an important cultural group for Palestinian and Nelson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morena, my name is Hannah Williams, and I will be sharing a statement on behalf of a Jewish member of our community today. My name is Eros. I am culturally Jewish and have been trying to find community as I wish to convert to Judaism after growing up separated from my Jewish family. This search has led me high and low to learn all I can about Judaism, about our history, and subsequently to learning about Israel and its founding. I've discovered from personal testimony, from historical documents, and from the lovely Jewish and Palestinian communities just how intertwined Zionism and anti-Semitism is. From modern-day settler colonialism and genocide to propaganda and misinformation, purposefully injected into Jewish teachings to trample and silence those of us in the Jewish community who currently, and at the founding of Israel, protested the creation of a Jewish ethno-state. I am horrified to see the pure brainwashing that has come from Israel's creation, with the single goal of warping this beautiful religion into a sick reversal of our most important values to perpetuate the genocide and hatred of an entire peoples we once lived amongst. To say I'm disappointed to find this hatred has found its place in our local communities is an understatement at the highest degree. My culture and religion, my God, are some of the most important parts of my life, yet I cannot bring myself to associate with the community here that I worked so hard to find because of this hatred for Palestinian life. I know my God will understand, and I know this decision is supported by him because I see his love in the very community who has invited me with open arms. These people I do not know outside of the pro-Palestine protests who dance and sing and fight to protect those who need it. They have shown me and everyone else at these protests support, love, and kinship that I have never known from other communities. I wish everyone who has been told that Palestinians are undeserving of their home, of their families, of their lives, come to understand who gave them those ideas and for what purpose. The only danger that the Jewish people have to face in relation to Palestine is the danger Israel has placed on us as a shield from all wrongdoing. I call on my Jewish siblings to embrace our Palestinian siblings. Never again means never again for anyone.
Will this pick up if I stand? Ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te kaka, ka tangi hoki aho, te hei muri ora. Ko te mihi tuatahi ki te atua I nā mea katoa, he honoria me te kroria ki tō ingoa tapu. Ko te mihi tuarua ki ngā hapu o te tau ihu nei, etu tonu mai. Ko te mihi tuatoru ko tō tātou atua, haere atu rā. Kei te mihi tonu au ki a mātou ngā hunga ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā katoa katoa. Ko mangu pātu te maunga, ko wakiri moana te moana, ko mātātua te waka, ko te waiti te marae, ko te poho o te kurikino te whare, ko te whare kauri tūhua tōki tīpuna. Ko whitamarama tūhua tōki mama, ko sārai tūhua tōku ingu. Engari e rauhen, e raua Rachel. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a koe mo te aroha me te mahi tautoko ki te iwi whānau o Pareti he tini. Tēnā koe. He mihi hoki a hau ki o hoa marunga te kaunihira nei e tautoko nei te kaupapa tēnā koutou. I've been reminded several times that this is not the correct forum to discuss the issues that we've raised here today. But your governance statement stipulates the following as part of the Council's service to us. Improving community wellbeing. The Council works with community groups and agencies to help reach our common goals. Community development and advocacy, supporting social services that help make Nelson a safe and healthy community. Heritage and arts to advance the identity and special character of the Nelson community, to protect and celebrate our heritage and quality of life. Councillors, as you're aware, our local Palestinians, who are part of our community, as well as our entire group, have been relentlessly targeted, bullied, and falsely accused of anti-Semitism. A vile, inherently racist campaign of harassment has been perpetuated over a variety of platforms, including this platform that we are here on today. I hope that you've all read the letter and looked at the attached photos of some of the examples of online harassment we've experienced, as well as the horrifying transcript from one of our local pastor's sermons that we provided you with 2 weeks ago. They're examples, just small examples. There are many more like it. and a growing file at Nelson Police. Council needs to understand that enabling this rhetoric to go unchecked is resulting in increased prejudice against the Palestinians and against the whole group. We do thank you for this opportunity that you've given us to clarify our position, who we are, what we stand for, and to refute the blatant lies and misinformation that were previously heard by Council. We request that you meet your obligation to Palestinians to advocate for their safe inclusion in our community, and that you recognise and support us as the multicultural community group that we are, just as you support Multicultural Nelson. Supporting the visibility of our group and the visibility of Palestinians is imperative to facilitating inclusion in the Nelson community. Palestinians deserve the opportunity to celebrate their culture here in Nelson, but they also deserve to express their grief and anger at the genocide of their country and to feel supported by their community. Nelson City Council should be taking the lead on this. Above all else, as our community representatives and governing board, we call for Council to support the aims of the boycott, divestment and sanction movement by not associating with any companies who operate in illegal settlements in occupied Palestine. Additionally, increase pressure on Erica Stanford to grant visas to Palestinian refugees, family members in Aotearoa, just as Ukrainian refugees were, and urge New Zealand's government to join the South Africa ICG case. Demand our government call for an immediate, permanent ceasefire in Palestine
your
and an
time
end to the war.
Yeah.
I know, I'm almost
Our
finished.
time has expired, but I also made very plain to your presentation exactly the same constraint, and I applied it very rigorously when the Jewish community presented, that the material that you're now covering about the government position is getting into foreign policy, which was not the basis of which I granted approval for you to present today. We are focused, as I said at the beginning, on the issues of ensuring the safety of all of our community here and not getting into the international relation issues that you now raise.
Yeah, I do feel that when government are failing to meet their obligations to our
No, I'm sorry.
citizens,
I'm sorry. I'm
you are
not here to
representing the
provide.
Palestinian community
I'm not here.
which
I'm
I do
not here
think
to
is a
provide.
responsibility for.
I ask you to
the
respect
council.
the chair and to keep your comments within the bounds of which I indicated at the beginning, please.
Okay. Whanganui District Council did just pass a motion calling for an immediate ceasefire on Tuesday, and I do call for Council to do that as well.
The time has expired.
I'm finishing with a prayer. He kōrero whakamutunga nei, he whakatauki mai ngā tīpuna. Ka pātai mā ki aho, he aha tia mea nui o te ao, māku e ki. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata, nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa, and free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Thank you. We now come to the next item on the agenda, which is a presentation by the Spectacle Limited on the potential for a community event later this year. And welcome Annie, Julian and Michael before council.
Kia ora koutou. Good morning. Thank you for having us here this morning. I imagine you have a great deal, many people from our community present broad issues to you, so we respect the time from you today. We'd love to bring to the awareness of the council and the broader community this little event, which there's a video which is just about to play to kick that off. Thank you. So the Spectacle's an event, as per the video, 13th to the 15th of December 2024 is the proposed date of our event. It is an international running festival, as you'll learn in the next few minutes. Very much a community event, but also very much a global event. We've got races across all distances from the mile to 100 miles for those who are keen on 100 miles.
I'm volunteering Tim Skinner for the 100 mile.
It is for all runners. We're hoping with some of the people you'll see in this presentation, it will be literally victory in Paris to Victory Square that this event is aimed to. It is Nelson-led, globally supported. We're Nelson people. We have global partners that share our vision for this event. Our hope is it's an annual event to really be the cornerstone of the active lifestyle that Nelson's becoming quite renowned for. So what's the event about? The projections of this event with similar events around the country and around the world, 3,000 plus entrants, 5,000 plus spectators across the streets of Nelson and the greater region. If you follow these things, the online streaming of these is more and more popular. Plenty of Kiwis are up watching UTMB Mont Blanc in the middle of the night, live streaming it. There'll be plenty of Americans doing the same with our event. So far, 62% of the entrants are from out of Nelson, particularly Wellington, Auckland, Australia, and we're yet to go above the line in the United States. The NRDA provided an economic impact assessment, which is based on the entrants rather than the spectators, and that's $3.5 million for the weekend. Julian and Annie have been particularly active with sharing this event with our local business community. For those that don't know us, I'm the Chief Executive of Matthews Eye Care, a nationwide eye care company which has got its home in Nelson, been here 77 years. 175 plus businesses have been visited, and the feedback has been extremely encouraging. $3.5 million, you say, Tarawera, New Zealand's premium event. Yes, it's 15 years in, but that event provides 10 million plus to the Rotorua economy every year. And our athlete reach, so far with the athletes you'll see, and this is quite incredible, I think there's plenty of public figures that would like the reach of some of these athletes, 1 million plus followers across Instagram and Facebook. We have Kiwibank, who's a local partner. They've committed to sponsor our Athletes with Disabilities race, as well as our children's events. Oakley, who have been fantastic, the global might of an eyewear brand, and Red Bull. The Chief Executive of Athletics New Zealand is a partner, and Athletics New Zealand will, approval willing, have the course certified as a potential world record course on the road mile, which is it's a pretty young world record, so we think we might be in for a chance of setting one in Nelson. So why here? Why now? We've certainly been asked the question, why the 14th of December? It is quite close to Christmas. There is a gap in the international running calendar. Firstly, our Kiwis are almost home to have Christmas dinner with mum and dad. The international athletes are in a place called Honolulu for a similar invitational mile the week before called the Merry Mile. It's literally the closest this field will get to New Zealand, and there's no chance of getting them during the Northern Hemisphere season. And they can experience a week and a half in Aotearoa. We're taking them across to the Oval Tasman after the event, and then they can go back home in time for Christmas and rave for the rest of their lives about Nelson, New Zealand. Why here? Julian and Annie have spent some time living in Boulder, Colorado. That's the mecca of trail running globally. They bring people here to Nelson. We take them up the back of the dam, up to Dew Lakes, up the Dun, and the feedback is this is better than Boulder. It literally is. And we have access to these trails, thankfully, through hard work from Ngāti Koata and the council. Their access to those trails is something for us for a long term. It is an annual event, but the year-round halo, I think the mountain biking community is starting to be aware of that. They won't just come or be able to come on that weekend, but they will come and replicate the event every weekend of the year. So great for tourism. There is a road closure, so without gain, there is a little bit of pain. The the key spectacle of the event is having a CBD race. It has to be in a circle for it to be eligible to be a certified course. The road closure period is 3 p.m. on a Saturday, the 14th of December, through to 10 p.m. With community races, the Community Mile, the Kids Mile, Athletes with Disabilities Mile, 5K, leading right up to the International Mile, which will be 8:30. It will be quite a spectacle seeing people do if you've seen someone do a 3-minute 45 mile 2 meters away, it's a pretty amazing thing to see. So I talked about the elite athletes. So Samuel Tanner, who we hope will keep fit and represent us in Paris. Geordie Beamish, who just ran very reminiscent of John Walker and is the indoor 1500 world champion. In fact, he beat some of the guys that we'd offered to pay money to come out here to race, and he's coming out here for free. So he is a talent to watch. Kimberly May, great young talent coming out of the States. Maya Ramsden, you'll notice here from these singlets, they spend a lot of time in the States, so they wouldn't be coming if it wasn't December. George Griffith, who has just done some fantastic things on the track. Hobbs Kessler, he was the world champ, and he is currently the road mile world record holder, I believe, or just got eclipsed. Great talent out of the US, coached by Nick Willis, I believe. So there's a New Zealand connection there. Ollie Hoare, Corey McGee, Morgan McDonald. This lady, Catherine Switzer, who you might know, she has a connection with Nelson. Catherine will be here as part of the event. She's got a book she'll be signing. She'll be on the podium. The first woman to register as a woman openly in a marathon. So she has fantastic legacy. Talking of legacy, Roger Robertson, Rod Dixon are part of this event. Their supporters, Annie's mum and dad, Christine Hughes, Feitzinger, and Peter. And that's our team. But I'll just stop on the legacy just for a second before we finish the presentation. But Julian went to Rio, sub 4-minute miler, doesn't like to talk about it. That's why I'm doing the talking. But without Dixon, without Taylor, without Walker, there's no Beamish, there's no Tanner, and there's no Matthews. So the dream of this event at the end of the day is the next one of those is from Clifton Terrace or Victory School. And I think that's our team. Nathan Fave's involved. Nathan Fave's got the big events experience. We have Adrian Blinko as well, who you might recall from a couple of Olympic Games. He is a very rapid guy over the 5K. Just ran a 2-hour 38 first marathon ever, which if you've run a marathon, that's just unbelievable. And we have an information pack with all the details there. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm looking forward to the census data next month, in which we will find whether Nelson has retained the crown as the most active region in New Zealand. Excited by the potential of the event, whether it is a celebration and a reinforcement of that or a challenge for us to be able to continue in that space. Welcome any questions from councillors before we wrap up this presentation. Councillor Sanson.
Thanks, through the Mayor. Kia ora. Really, it looks exciting. Even thinking about dusting off my own very dusty running shoes, maybe. I'm really. It's great to hear you're going to do some kids events and a disability running event or disability event. How are you going to kind of reach out into the community? Like, are you planning on going to schools? And I guess, is there, in terms of the entry fee to the events, for kids from Victory Community or Clifton Terrace? I'm just wondering what your kind of thinking is around that and how you're going to make it as accessible as possible.
So it's a good question. That's a key part of the event, having tons and tons of kids. The entry fee is $5 intentionally. They get a medal. The medal costs us about $8. So the idea is really to get kids involved. And the activation through the community will happen through schools leading up to the event. A key part of bringing a couple of these elites out here is that they will do a school visit, and we'll have a dozen elites, so they'll be able to do that. Yeah.
Thank you again for your presentation. The use of of the Ngāti Koata land and the agreement that Council has just recently been able to resolve reinforces the importance of that. There is a formal process to go through with respect to the road closures, of which there will be councillors considering that. But can I thank you for your patriotism to Nelson and taking this initiative, and wishing you all the very best as you put this proposal. Can I also acknowledge Ali Boswick from our Chamber of Commerce, who has communicated with us strong support and the economic as well as the health and other benefits of us being able to host this event. Thank you again for your presentation. Council now comes to the minutes of our meeting of 2nd of May. Do colleagues have any questions with respect to those minutes? Is a colleague prepared to move their adoption? Thank you, Councillor Courtney, seconded Councillor Sanson. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. We now come to the resolutions with respect to the Nelson Regional Sewerage Business Unit and the 3 resolutions in the report. Are there any members from the Nelson Council on this item that wish to speak or draw any particular items to the attention of Council? That being the case, would someone be prepared to move the resolutions, including the report, the notification requirements endorsement, and the delegation of authority? Thanks, Councillor Pakipaki. Seconded. Councillor Rollo. No discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. That is adopted. We now come to item 6.2 with respect to the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee, covered on pages of the report, which is the approval of the internal audit plan. Are there any questions with respect to the Audit and Finance Committee's recommendations in that regard?
Happy to move.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Happy to second from the Chair. Is there any discussion? That being the case, I put the approval of the Nelson City Council's internal audit report for the coming financial year. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, say no. That is carried. We come to the Mayor's report. It is my intention to take it in sections. The first is simply the receipt of the report. I'll just make some brief comments with respect to each of the items and then seek a mover and seconder for those. The first substantive item is the Tasman Environmental Trust, and it's a request that we appoint a representative following on from changes to their trust deed. Now, I've been associated with the Tasman Environment Trust from over 20 years ago when it was first established. The benefits that I think it really provides is in supporting citizens-based conservation work. Many of these trusts around New Zealand have been formed to try and build partnerships, particularly with rural communities, on addressing the huge challenges New Zealand particularly has around biodiversity, but also with respect to issues of water quality. I was delighted during the annual plan process that this council made a decision and acknowledged the support of Councillor Stallard and also Councillor Skinner in council contributing formally to this organisation. And the motion that I have before you today is part of them wanting to extend their ambit into being a Nelson Tasman organisation. I have noted in my report that they are considering a name change from the Tasman Environment Trust to reflect the broader coverage of the region. But I also have to indicate I'm not too sensitive about that. We have organisations like the Nelson Regional Development Agency that doesn't technically have Tasman in their name. And each week I say a wee prayer that we might have equal contributions from Nelson and Tasman to that agency, and have discussed with the Tasman Council our commitment in our LTP to lift our contribution to an equal level with Tasman District is part of that strategic picture we're taking as a council of doing more stuff jointly with our neighbour. My resolution recommends that we appoint Councillor Stallard as the City Council representative on the Tasman Environment Trust. That arises from Councillor Stallard expressions interest in this area, but I think all of us would acknowledge the significant passion and interest that Councillor Stallard has had in these issues around biodiversity and the like. And so from the chair, I would like to move resolution 2 that we appoint Councillor Aaron Stallard as the City Council representative on the Tasman Environment Trust, and seek a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Rainey. Any discussion? Councillor Sansom.
I'll just, are we going to take the vote on that particular item?
No, I'm going to go through item by item.
Okay, I'll just step away for the vote on that. I'm not that I don't support Councillor Stallard, but
I was getting really worried.
Is also on the my partner's also on the board of the trust. You know, there's no pecuniary conflict or anything, but
I understand, and it's appropriate for you to note that your hubby does great work with both Forest and Bird, but also with the trust. Is there any discussion on the item? That being the case, I'd like to put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. We come to the second item. I've been under some pressure, but in a polite way, from the Nelson branch of the China Friendship Society, as well as the Sister Cities, to ensure that we maintain the Sister City relationships. And it is true that during the COVID period, these relationships were effectively put on ice. I think the relationship both for Nelson and New Zealand with China is particularly significant. I do note when I look at all of the key economic data that while China is now New Zealand's largest trading partner, it forms a lesser portion of Nelson's trade. I notice in terms of our visitor numbers, we get a lesser share of visitors from China than the New Zealand average. And I also think, to be quite open, if we look at some of the security issues, there is increased tension. And for us to understand those is to the benefit of our community. I am very aware of the pressure on ratepayers. It is not my proposal that my travel costs to China will be covered by the ratepayer. There may be some relatively small incidental costs associated with gifts and the relationship that would be subject to the Chief Executive's approval for me joining in the trip. The Society and the Sister City Committee is committed in doing the trip regardless of whether I attend, but they've made very plain to me that in terms of maintaining the relationship, my involvement in the delegation would be valued. Welcome any questions or comment before the item is considered. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. And I think it's appropriate at this point that I say to you, on behalf of all of us around this table, that we wish you well and to thank you for taking this initiative and moving forward with a sister city or sister cities relationships so soon in your term as mayor. And I think you'll find that it's essential that we get these people-to-people relationships built, because it's the key, isn't it, to understanding each other and also finally to peace. When we know our sister cities better and we know other countries and the populations in those countries better. So on behalf of the council, I do wish you a safe, enjoyable and successful visit to our sister cities in China. And it brings back memories that 47 years ago, I was there, 1977. I had the good fortune to be selected by my parliamentary colleagues to join the first New Zealand parliamentary delegation to the People's Republic of China, and it's etched in my memory and will stay there forever. So I do wish you all the very best as you travel around that wonderful country. People are warm, hospitable, and extremely friendly, and you'll have a wonderful time. I'm sure.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Any other comments from colleagues? I'll take Councillor Brand. Off. I'm relaxed.
Well, Councillor Sanson had her hand up before me, so.
I thought I was trying to interpret your finger. I'll take Councillor Sanson then, if that's your preference.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, through the chair. Yeah, I'm no issues with this at all. Just thinking about our sister city relationships and the presentation that you and I were at, Mayor Nick, along with Councillor Paki and Councillor Anderson earlier this week, around the Pacific or Polynesian panthers, and just wondering what opportunity there might be, given that we are a community that hosts a number of RSE workers, for us to kind of consider establishing a sister city relationship with one of the Pacific Island nations to kind of strengthen our Pacific relationships, and maybe we can have Matty talk with the Pacifica Trust, identify which country might be appropriate, and then explore that. I don't know if you think it's a good idea, but I just, reflecting on this, it's not, I mean, I'm supportive of strengthening, multicultural and global relationships, but I'd really love to see us strengthen that with the Pacific Island neighbours as well.
Happy to respond in the form of a question that you've asked. I think the first thing, and I'm very much looking for Councillor Brand to take the lead on behalf of the council about these relationships, but my approach has been one of, firstly, we've got the two sister city relationships with China. We've got actually the very special relationship with Miyazu, a very special relationship, and it's the second oldest in New Zealand and very strong, coming up to its 50th anniversary, and also a question mark about the Eureka relationship. My sort of view has been, firstly, post-COVID, let's check in and make sure that those relationships are in good heart before we extend. And then very happy to have a strategic view about it. I think we want to be quite open about the resource requirements for council and for the ratepayer, and given in the current financial situation. And that is why my view, and recently with Councillor Brand, hosted a meeting with those associated with the US North American relationships, and want to send a signal, whether it be the Pacific or others, that these need to be community driven. That is, council's happy to provide some backup and some support, but that's where it might be. I also think, in with respect to the sister city potential with, and Nelson's relationship with the Pacific, Matty's doing a fantastic job for this council in connecting with those communities and what's the best way to do it, and I genuinely have an open mind. Councillor Brand.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So these, I'm in support of you attending and strengthening the relationship with China, as it is a mayor-to-mayor relationship that our volunteer community groups do manage on our behalf. But also too, we've heard of the disrupt and the disrespect and things that have been happening for other people this morning, as well as the other council. And when COVID hit, a lot of our Chinese community were actually treated as outcasts and as attacked on many different grounds just for being Chinese, regardless of how long they've been in the country or if they're even born here. So I think it is important that we re-establish, reconnect and strengthen the relationship that we do have with China and the two sister cities, and that continues to go forth as we will continue to strengthen the other relationships that we have with our other sister cities. And I just want to comment about Miyazu, because you keep saying we're the second. We were almost the first. We were picked by a number of days. We would have been the first sister city in New Zealand had it not been for a couple of days. So while we keep saying we're the second, we thought we were the first at one point, but we did become the second. But these relationships are extremely important, especially with all the unrest and other things happening outside of our country, where we are quite isolated, and it is important that we ensure that we nurture those relationships. So I'm full support and happy to second.
Thank you. In fact, I'll ask you to move. Is there any other Councillor Hodgson?
Thanks, Mick. I'm really supportive of the kaupapa behind the sister city relationships. I do just want to share a small reflection that I had the other day, and it was just that when many of these relationships were set up, the world was quite different. And I was reflecting when we were in our last meeting discussing some of this, and half of us were out with COVID. We had people zooming in from online, and it did just make me reflect on how technology can enable relationship building to a much bigger degree than previously. And so I know, man, Nick, you're an incredibly busy person. I know there are sister city committees that also spend time investing in these relationships outside of actual visits. But I hope that if you're taking the few days out to visit, that is a small chunk of the relationship building that takes place, and that we would also be using technology, just bearing in mind the fiscal and environmental costs of overseas travel.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Any other remarks? That being the case, Councillor Brand is happy to move. Councillor Courtney is happy to second. I put the resolution in respect of my leave to visit our sister cities in China. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. That's carried. Come to item 4 on my report. It's just noting the appointment in respect of the work on the electoral reform working group for LGNZ. I would note in the context of this report, and I included the data, we should be proud of the fact that Nelson's participation in local elections is about 12% consistently better than the national average. But it is equally true that it has been in decline. I think we've got a real issue around our mandate, both as mayor and council, to speak for communities when that starts dropping below 50% of eligible voters. I do think there's a huge challenge. I've just been aghast at the collapse in postal numbers and postal services. And even in Nelson, the number of households that now do not have a letterbox. I think the days of postal voting are limited. And the other thing that's going to be relevant to the huge challenge in this piece of work is you never make changes in an area as important as electoral law without getting a pretty broad consensus. I think there's a real risk of this issue just continuing to be put in the too hard basket. I've seen that as this debate has raged over the last 20 years, and the do nothing option is the easy option. And so it is going to be quite a substantial piece of work, both to provide the right way forward, but also to try and build broad support across New Zealand, across councils, across the various political parties in Parliament, to make legislative reform and to try and get a way forward to ensure the strength of local democracy going forward. So it's a privilege to be asked by LGNZ to do this work. Look forward to getting my teeth into it. There will be some cost. LGNZ will be meeting some of those costs of my travel as I work on this. The objective is to have a report on a way forward presented to the Local Government New Zealand Conference in July of 25. Any questions, comments? Councillor Sanson.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, through the chair. I'm just looking at the terms of reference and under the scope, the best way to promote voter participation. And I'm just wondering if the lowering the age of voting to 16 for local government elections is within the scope?
The key focus of the group and the directions that have been given to me by the Council of LGNZ is around participation. The current government has ruled out any change in the voting age, and so it's not likely that will be a key focus. Having said that, the group is yet to have its first meeting, and I can report back on where it goes. It is the preference of LGNZ for us to commission some key research, asking those questions around why has there been the decline in participation, and certainly the question of young people's participation will arise during the course of that. So my answer would be no, it's not a key focus, but it may come up around the broader discussion of young people's participation in local elections. Councillor Rollo.
Thanks, Nick, and I wish you well on this. I note that local government NZ in the last probably year have started losing membership from other councils. And what's the position, a view of the chair of this group to approach councils that in recent months have left LGNZ, and do you expect local government New Zealand to take their feedback on, or is it simply for the membership of LGNZ?
The councils that are no longer a member of LGNZ, the Deputy Mayor may correct me, I think Auckland, Westland, Grey, Kaipara. And the approach that I'll be taking, particularly with respect to Auckland, they're a quarter of the country, and for them not to be involved in the piece of work. So the intention is to engage with the Auckland Council, but also need to be clear that the piece of work is for those that are members of LGNZ. I think the bigger challenge is going to be, having done the work, to then try and build parliamentary support. There is a very healthy, generally observed tradition in Parliament that electoral law changes are made with broad support across the Parliament, and you will not get broad support across the Parliament unless we take into account the views of Auckland. And so it is the intention of the group to both engage with the Auckland Council and with those communities, and I intend to take a pretty relaxed, similar approach to those communities on the West Coast. No further questions. Is someone prepared to move just the noting motion? Councillor Rollo, seconded by Councillor Hodgson. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, say no. That is carried. We now come to the last item of the Mayor's report. This is the item with respect to the Nelson City Council's submission on the Local Government Electoral Issues and Maori Wards and Constituencies Amendment Bill. It is disappointing.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I just do a point of order? Can you just explain to me why we just voted on that as it was a note? Is that normal procedure?
Did I not put it to the vote?
Yeah, no, you did put it to the vote, but that's a note. I don't think we're approving anything, are we? Are we just acknowledging? Is that how it works?
There's a number of resolutions that council receives that simply.
Yeah, usually they're taken collectively, so we'll do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it's just
it was just my view that there were, with the Mayor's report, a number of different items that just mechanically the easiest way to handle it, Councillor Pakipaki, was to take them one by one. Council will note that I've not taken the first resolution 1, the receipt of the Mayor's report. After I deal with item 5, it is my intention to drop back and deal with item 1. It just seemed in the order of business to pass the resolution adopting the Mayor's report when you hadn't discussed it was a bit out of order. And so if I just ask for a bit of indulgence.
Oh, that's okay. I found it unusual that we're approving a note.
It's not the only occasion, and look, whether it required a resolution, I'm very much guided by the governance team, and we could spend more time debating whether it should be a noting motion than what we would spend voting on it, albeit I'm for less rather than more motions.
Noted.
I don't think we have a vote on that noted.
Oh, you are so helpful. So with respect to this issue, I did want to note that it makes it very difficult for councils to engage in the parliamentary process when you have a bill introduced to the House and before we've actually had a full council meeting, us having to make a submission. Can I thank the work of the Deputy Mayor in putting the submission together and the cooperation of council enabling that to occur. It is my intention, consistent with the previous item, for me to abstain on voting on the item. But I do compliment the work of council officers and the Deputy Mayor in putting the work in on the submission. The item is now open for debate. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. Since we discussed this last, I've had time to reflect further on the submission to the Justice Committee, and our submission states, and I supported it, that the government should treat Maori wards or constituencies the same as all other wards and not require a poll. That was the thrust of our submission to the Justice Select Committee. But this on reflection, in my view, does not go far enough. And I'd like to make one or two points just to support that view. Te Tiriti, the treaty itself, was established especially as a partnership with iwi, and Maori wards, I believe, are a part of that special relationship. It's key, and that should be paramount as far as our submission goes. There are still a number of councils, as we're aware, without Maori wards today, but a significant number of councils are not treating Maori wards the same as a general ward or general wards, let alone putting into effect the special partnership and special relationship. There is the inconsistency in the legislation that Wairoa District Council, Waikato and Bay of Plenty regional councils don't have to conduct a poll. There is the inconsistency that Maori seats in Parliament are not being challenged by the government by also requiring them to be polled. There is the inconsistency that has been ignored in my view, and that is a Maori ward elector has a fraction of the representation of a general ward elector in Nelson. In my view, a Maori ward elector today in this city does not have fair and equitable representation under the current system. The current electoral arrangements in Nelson severely disadvantages the Maori elector. And what's important, and this is an incredibly important area for our democracy, is the representation of communities of interest. That's paramount. Localism is important. Local people having a voice. Local people involved in the decision making. Community groups are underrepresented around this table too, I believe. So we must strive and ensure that there is input, involvement, engagement, participation from as many residents as possible so that we as a council can make even better decisions into the future. It's important we all walk the road together, that we don't just talk, that we don't just take, but we take action. That we aspire for a world and a place in the world that we want to see harmony, respect, inclusion, valuing diversity, because, Mayor Nick, democracy is precious. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Pakipaki.
Kia ora mai tātou. Here we are again. Thank you, Councillor Courtney. That was, again, stealing most of my points he probably read some of my notes, but I appreciate the words. I think that they're as accurate as you get. I think for the community, we need to acknowledge that really where we were going with the submission and the thrust and push of it was to identify the fact that only the Māori wards have been singled out in this piece of legislation, and that's problematic in itself because it's really one rule. They have this rhetoric of saying that we're trying to keep things even across the board, but really there's if you were to start saying to some of the rural communities who are represented by these wards that they should be removed, I'm pretty sure that just the community, the country wards and rural wards, I'm sure they would be pretty upset with it. My problem really with this was where the council sat. We had a standing position in this council, and there's a few of the members of this room here were the ones who supported the establishment of the Māori ward in its infancy, and I commend them for that. That's really cool. And they legislated on that. So we in our forum, we decided that was a good idea for our community. Now that stands and that stood and currently still does stand, that was the position of council, and yet we remained silent. And we didn't say anything. And we had an opportunity where the mayors of the country signed a letter in opposition, and unfortunately, Mr. Mayor decided that he wouldn't. I have been explained other reasons as to why not, but also that it wasn't even brought into discussion with the rest of the council. It was skimmed over, and we had to find out about it later, which was really embarrassing for especially in my position to have to explain the actions of our number one head honcho, the mayor of this council and of this city. I want to make it really clear that we had a standing position and we said nothing on the matter. We remained silent. We remained silent. Not only we remained silent, but our workshop, admittedly, we had an LTP to deal with, but this is an important matter. Our workshop was scheduled in on the 31st of May. The 29th of May, 2 days earlier, is when the submissions actually closed. Fortunately, we managed to rummage around after the hornet's nest was kicked and get a submission in on behalf of council. Unfortunately, our mayor again has another reason that he couldn't be a part of that, as he's just explained with the LG committee. So I just wanted to also point out the benefits that this has for our Māori community, to really start thinking about them participating in this, because we've had such a long period of time where we have been continually excluded, and that has been a practice of hegemony right across the board. It's undeniable, it's demonstrated, and we have clear examples of that we as elected members and we as governing people choose to ignore, especially central government, apparently with this new government. And the fact that we're heading towards a poll, I challenge any person in this room to show me where a minority has asked for a poll. Polls are only asked by people. They only want polls to go ahead when they're the majority, when they know they're going to have that form of democracy is going to suit their agenda, it's going to suit their outcomes. Unfortunately, we need to address this by looking at what hasn't worked for such a very long time. And we're working towards a model that will work. And that model really looks at trying to push really good outcomes for our community. There's nothing nefarious about it. There's nothing wrong about it. This is a really good thing that we have done. We've decided here's an opportunity to have good, proportionate representation, not of just a community, a minority community, but the Indigenous population of this country, which is, that's different. And I guess the rhetoric that I hear, they come in and say, oh, one vote for everyone, we're all on that level pegging. And they're the same people asking for a poll. But again, I challenge you, polls and referendums are called by people who sit in the majority, who are comfortable with that process. And we've got other means of being able to address the needs, the individual needs, and have a bespoke process to have really good outcomes for each of the groups of our community. So nō reira, tēnā koutou.
I've been a little bit loose in my cheering, in that both the contributions heartfelt by Councillor Courtney and Pakipaki are more in the motion of the debate. So retrospectively, I'd seek a mover, which the Deputy Mayor is happy to do, and Councillor Pakipaki would be happy to second the resolution.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
And continue the debate. We're in debate format, albeit there could have been questions from the chair. We've rolled straight into debate, and if there is any questions that arise, I'll deal with them as summing up at the end. Councillor Rollo.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I actually had a question of the Deputy Mayor. I believe he fronted the powers that be on Tuesday. I wanted to know how we got on.
In the relaxed format I like to run, it's a fair question, and I'd ask the Deputy Mayor to ask. I'm sure councillors are quite relaxed.
If we're quite relaxed, I was going to just use my debate to explain that. So do you mind? Or do you mind if I just go now?
Why don't you just take your option?
Which is to say, it was. It's been actually I felt very lucky to be able to put my name to this work, both in adding my signature to the letter to the government and to be able to represent Nelson City Council and our views there. I spent the morning before my submission listening to councils from across the country submit in a variety of ways, using a variety of words, but saying almost all the exact same thing, which is what our submission has said as well, which is that delineating and separating and isolating out Māori wards is unacceptable. And if you think about, as diverse as our parliament is with the whip system, you generally end up at this point with about 6 views on any given issue that is vocalised presently within that debating chamber. The beautiful thing about local government is that we've got over 600 plus elected members, almost all of which are free to say whatever the hell they want, and they do. And yet, and this is from councils in the deep south to the far north to sunny old Nelson, and there has been incredibly broad agreement from the sector, from the people working and engaging in this space that can see both the benefits of Māori wards and the unacceptable position it is to isolate them out. And it's interesting where you've got councils with very unique situations as well. You've got Selwyn District Council where iwi have no interest in having a Māori ward down there. They're comfortable with their representation arrangements as it is. They're still going to stand up and speak up about this, despite zero intention to ever introduce a Māori ward. And so I really think it is it's quite a beautiful thing to see a sector that is famously great at infighting and at struggling to agree on things, agreeing in quite a profound way. I do want to acknowledge councillors for the short turnaround in terms of replying to emails and attending that workshop to be able to shape up what was originally presented. And it was good to be able to engage through the select committee process in terms of what was discussed there. We talked through the submission, through the range of views that are here as well around whether the entirety of our electoral arrangement should be put to referendum or not. But again, that present theme that it is the delineation, the isolation, and the targeting of this one format of ward that achieves the goals of the Local Electoral Act, which is about giving people fair representative democracy. And it was also an opportunity to talk about things like Kia Kotahi Te Tauihu, our partnership agreement, and to celebrate that in a large format where it is being widely recognised as a really forward-looking document and one that we can enhance. And I think one of the key principles that came out through the questioning across the day was this idea of ands that Nick loves to talk about. Not or, but that what a Māori ward provides is an and opportunity. We can have our direct engagement with iwi. We can have direct engagement with hapu. We can have those formal relationships, and we can have the wider spectrum of Māori within our community, our matawaka as well, represented around the table. And I, as much as this has been, I think, a challenging debate and reflecting on the experiences in Nelson as well in 2012, one that has a lot of potential to be divisive and harmful and racist, that actually there has been a beautiful flip side to that, which is people from all sorts of backgrounds coming together to say, this is not okay.
Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah, if there was one good thing that's come out from this, I think it would be how heartwarming it is that we're quite united as a group and as a council in our view on this legislation. And so I'm glad the submission's gone out. And also, as the Deputy Mayor highlighted, that the sector of local government is also very united. And to be honest, I can't rationalise in my head the approach that central government has chosen to take here. It's been divisive. It's been very unconstructive. And they haven't given a lot of space for communities to have their say either. The issue that I think they were partly trying to tap into that. I think they completely missed the beat on was some discomfort across the country about local councils and local government making decisions about its electoral arrangements. And for me, that's the core issue here. And so I'm really glad that we've submitted against the approach that the government has taken. And I do want to say, and just, I suppose, flag for future, that if they do compel us to hold a referendum on the Māori ward, my view is that we should be putting our whole electoral system in Nelson up for discussion. I don't think that we should be singling out the Māori ward, but I do think that our community deserves to have a say on all of our system, whether that's the Māori ward, the General Stoke, Te Hunanui wards, and the STV system as well.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. I'd like to thank and acknowledge the Deputy Mayor's diligent work on preparing the submission and also going to make the oral or making the oral submission on our behalf. I appreciate that. I agree with Councillor Hodgson that one of the benefits of the government introducing this legislation has been the outpouring, the galvanisation of support for Māori in our governance procedures, or governance arrangements around the country, and I find that really heartening. And there can be no question that those in government who introduced this legislation would, I think, be taken aback by the level of support around the country that's been shown. And I find it unbelievable that they would have the audacity to introduce legislation that has the potential to open up a cauldron of racism, an inevitable cauldron of racism that's going to flow on from this if the legislation is successful. It's truly, in my mind, appalling that they would even give consideration to making that kind of move. I hope the people of Nelson truly understand the benefit that having a Māori ward representation around this council table brings. It's got nothing to do with the person, with all due respect. But the flow-on effect of having an eye on Tao Māori around this table is deeply influencing on all the work that we do. And I truly relish the opportunity to be sitting at this table when that representation is part of what we do every day, every meeting, well, most meetings. It makes a tremendous difference to the way that we operate as councillors, and to me personally, I've truly enjoyed it and learned a lot, and welcome its continuation. We have another 3 years where we are going to be able to enjoy that ability to have that around our table. I fear for what will happen after that. I really fear for it, for the city, for us as councillors on a personal level, and for the nation. So I fully support this submission going through. I fully support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rainey. In my own contribution, the first thing I'd say is to acknowledge the difficult position that Councillor Pakipaki is in the sense that we have legislation and a debate that impacts on him being able to sit around the table. So can I acknowledge Councillor Pakipaki and put on record that Councillor Paki has been an effective councillor in the 18 months that I've been privileged to be mayor. The timing of the situation was far less than ideal in two respects. The first is that when the bill was introduced on the Thursday, this council will recall that we were in 2 days of the two most intense days as my time as mayor in concluding the debate on the long-term plan. And it was a little bit of an oversight that I hadn't realised the bill had been introduced, and worse, that a very, very short submission time had been set around it. And the second aspect of the timing that was unfortunate was that I had been in discussion with Local Government New Zealand since March about leading the role with the Local Government Reform Group. They were not intending to make the announcement until this week. And so our iwi leaders were left in a bit of a position of the Mayor has not signed his letter and the why, and me feeling somewhat caught between a rock and a hard place of not wanting to announce my role on the Local Government Reform Group, but it being pivotal to the decision as to my adding my signature or being involved in the submission. I directly raised the issues with the President of Local Government New Zealand. His strong advice was that the submission of the Nelson City Council be in the name of the Deputy Mayor so that this council's voice could be heard, but that it would not compromise the challenging job I'm going to have to try and get a broad consensus across all councils across New Zealand in where we go on broader questions around electoral reform. In respect of the issue itself, these have the risk to be quite divisive, but we should not overlook these two major sets of values of which we're trying to navigate our way through. And that is fundamental to our liberal democratic values is that all New Zealanders are treated equally and that is regardless of ethnicity. And we've got those liberal democratic values and those that hold very strictly to those with the equally powerful argument that from the treaty there is a obligation to provide for Maori representation. And whether it be the issues that different councils have around how you, in practice, deliver on those treaty obligations is at the heart of this quite difficult and challenging issue. I do want to put on record a view that I don't agree with the assertion that councils should have the right to make their own representation arrangements. I do not think councils should be free to change their representation any more than I think Parliament should be free to make its own representation arrangements. When it came to the switch between MMP and FPP and any change, in my view, of the relationships by which our Parliament is constituted is not for Parliament to decide alone, but I think a fundamental principle of democracy is that it is owned by the electors, not by the elected. And that makes this extra challenging. It's reflected in the way in which Parliament itself does not get to make the decisions about where electoral boundaries are and has decided to have that delegated independently to the Representation Commission. This does not discount from my support for Kahu or the submission that the Council has decided to make, but just to reinforce how difficult these issues are. If I wish to play a role as Mayor, it is being one that is not allowing these issues to be polarised, particularly in our local community, and that we work hard on finding solutions and a way forward. I am interested in the idea that's been put forward by Councillor Hodgson, and that is that if Parliament forces us to have a referendum on the future of the Maori ward, this council could decide to also have a referendum on whether we continue with the Stoke and City ward, because there are a substantive number of people that do not agree with those either, and that would be an option for us if the legislation is passed. Again, I acknowledge the work of the Deputy Mayor. I don't think the voice of the Nelson City Council has been compromised by it being led by the Deputy Mayor that has enabled us to be able to have a say on this bill. Councillor Scott.
Thank you for that. I echo some of your words there, Nick. It's obviously a difficult situation for many. I very much echo that the way we are voted in is not dictated by us. It should not be in our power as councillors. We're very privileged to be here representing the community, and it's a decision of the community. And point raised about wards, just a reminder, the wards came about by default, because if you're the Māori ward, it wouldn't be a ward if you had everyone at large. So to have not everyone at large, you've got to then have another ward as well. So that a Māori ward becomes a ward. I think that caught some off guard around the table last term, not fully understanding the machinations of the decisions made. But the same with the STV. I find it hard saying. It sounds more like a disease than a democratic thing. But I was surprised our last council decided on STV. And, they made that decision. That would have been something the public would have done, because that had very much shaped who got on the table. I think it, in hindsight or in foresight, it shaped it. Those already standing had an advantage, I felt, with under STV, where everyone's fighting for a spot, not fighting, but going for a spot for like a team. And I always see the election as being the public vote, a team of 13 members. They'll vote some of us quite different views because they want to see the balance and robust debate at the table rather than one view. And my concern is when you have ward systems, whether it be location-based ward or Māori ward, you take away that ability for the public to vote for those who they want or not vote for those they don't want. And by having wards, there are many situations, both the Māori ward, plus would be Turner or Stoke or Nelson, people say, hey, I wanted to support this person, but I couldn't. Well, actually, I didn't want this person to get in, I'd rather this person, but they had no influence. They felt ostracised from it. It concerned me a little bit in some of the commentary but earlier today in regards to they will determine whether there's a referendum or not, or they will. No, it's we. Public are we. They aren't our opposition. We aren't seeing a public as, we better shape it in a way that they will serve us. Quite the opposite. We're serving the public. And if the public decide to have a Māori ward, so be it. If the public decide not to have a Māori ward, so be it. If the public decide to have STV, so be it. But you get onto this council on your merits. So on this one, I won't be supporting wards in general. If the public want wards, let the public make that decision. And it's a little bit rich if you're saying, well, it's only a majority will determine this or that. That's what democracy is. I don't know if you've seen, I don't see a $50 note very often these days, but the face on that is this great man, Sir Pirana Ngata. He wrote a very good book on the treaty, and it disturbs me often. I think well-meaning people got this idea that the treaty is about creating two peoples. No, the treaty was a very privileged in this country to have a treaty is about one people, two rich cultures which have shaped everybody at this table. And I think we're very blessed as a nation to have two very rich cultures and many more cultures that have. But we serve under one governance, and that governance is determined by the public, not they. The public are we, and we are there as part of a public. So I appreciate everybody at this table, and I never take for granted being on council. And when we sign that oath, doesn't matter what ward you are in, if you're in Tahuna, Nelson, whether your parents, or whoever your parents, wherever your parents were born, or you're born yourself, when you read that oath, we all sign for exactly the same oath. And that oath was to serve the community as a whole, to do what you think best for the community as a whole, not for one aspect of the community. But it is great, and it comes back into wealth and richness that I enjoy about council, and that the people I know enjoyed, and I used to enjoy. You could pick, a bit like picking a rugby team, you'd pick 11, 12, 13 people at the table, and you might be surprised if they vote, but they'll vote those maybe quite a different outlook on life, with different backgrounds, but they want to have that diversity of view, not diversity of who your parents are, not diversity of your age, but diversity of view and experiences in life. And that's what we are, part of the community. The community aren't they are we. So I thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Skinner. There being no further
exercise my right of reply. To round this off, I thank colleagues for the breadth of discussion that's occurred. it's interesting. We seem to have gotten somewhat off where the starting point for this was, which is our submission. But I'll take the length of rope that's been given and try to avoid hanging myself with it. In commenting that I think there is a very real debate to be had here, and discussion around the wider settings of democracy and local government's role in it. I always like to shy away from too strong a purity in this space, because the reality on the ground is that it's not that pure. We just have to ask Tauranga or Environment Canterbury. But we are subservient to Parliament. That is the nature of our arrangement. And when we talk about STV versus past the post, we also have to confront with the fact that the legislation sets a default and only gives you two options. We're always limited by what's handed down from Parliament in the acts that empower us to do our work. It's an interesting constitutional arrangement. A lot of countries do it the other way around, that we empower upwards, not downwards. But that is not the constitutional arrangement we have in this country. Well, yeah, when I think, just in terms of some of Councillor Skinner's points, that was being referred to as the government, that is saying that you have two choices. You can rescind your decision, get rid of your Māori ward for 2025, or you will have a referendum. Not the public will have an opportunity to call for a referendum. You will have one. But worse than that, if you rescind, the public won't have an opportunity to call for a referendum. You will have made that decision and they will have no recourse to say, well, hang on, we've had a taste of this and we quite liked it. This is legislation that points in a single direction. And that is the clear evidence of how it is structured and of the fact that you give no recourse unless you give an answer that is desired. And I think that this council has taken the appropriate position on this. But that, again, we should be having these discussions, and we should be having them in a way that is respectful and honours both the fundamental foundation, that engages with questions of kawanatanga and tiratanga, that is broad enough to capture all of that, because we have the resource and the time around this table to actually be able to do that, something that isn't afforded to so many in our community. So when this, or should this go to a referendum, I also want to reflect on the role that we have as people who are handed all of the information we could need on this issue on a plate. We can send an email off and request whatever we need, and we are provided the time and the space to discuss this thoroughly. Is that we need to make sure that we are bringing that discussion out to everyone, because an informed decision can only be made if you're given the time, the expertise, the knowledge, and the resourcing to fully consider those decisions. And as part of that, also making sure that we get the turnout as well, because one of the other awkward implications of polls is that, especially when they're not held in conjunction with an election, usually have even worse turnout than our already poor turnout in local government. So if we extrapolate too far into theory and away from the reality of what's happening on the ground, we end up in a very lovely world that is not reflective of the community around us. So we must hold that balancing act. But I want to again commend the discussion and say that let's have it. Let's have the free and frank, and let's own that to the community.
Thanks, the Deputy Mayor. I'm going to put resolution 5.
Mr. Chair, does the seconder have a right of reply?
No, I'm sorry.
They don't? Okay.
I'm going to put the resolution number 5. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no.
No.
Would you like a division, Councillor Paki? I'll ask the Chief Executive to call a division on resolution 5 of the Mayor's report.
Division on item 5 of the Mayor's report. Now, have we got Councillor Anderson online? No. Apology. Councillor Benge. Councillor Brand. Councillor Courtney. Councillor Hodgson.
Aye.
Councillor Paki.
It's Paki. Aye.
Councillor Rainey.
Aye.
Councillor Rollo.
Aye.
Councillor Sanson.
Aye.
Councillor Skinner.
No.
Councillor Stallard.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor.
Aye.
Mayor Nick.
Abstain.
The ayes have it.
Declare the resolution carried. We'll take a 5-minute break and council will resume at 10:35.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
Council is resumed. We come to item 8 on the agenda, which is with respect to a submission to the New Zealand Transport Agency, Whakakatahi, with respect to emergency works investment policies. I invite David before council to both present the report and to answer any questions. We're in your good hands.
Through the chair. So good morning. Firstly, I would like to introduce Lyndon Hammond to my right. So Lyndon is a new team leader in the transport activity management area. Lyndon has recently joined us from Kiwi Rail. And before that, he had worked for NZTA for 18 years. So knows that system very well. So one of the first tasks when he joined was to undertake this review and write this submission. So this will be Lyndon's first time presenting this report, and I've asked that he gives a little introduction about the report itself. Thank you.
Welcome to the team, Lyndon, and look forward to both your work on this issue as well as with the council. We like the idea of having an insider from NZTA, given they're such a significant funder for this critical area of transport infrastructure.
Through the chair, I think the expression is gamekeeper turned poacher, I think.
We like the notion of that,
yeah.
But we'll ask our Junos not to write that down.
So emergency works category enables funding from the National Land Transport Fund in response to a defined major short duration natural event. New Zealand Transport Agency Whakakatahi are proposing changes to this policy. We would have normally taken this submission through the Regional Transport Committee, but due to feedback being required next week, we haven't got a Transport Committee meeting that we can take this to, so we're seeking council endorsement of our submission. The consultation process has been very short. It opened on 1st of May, closes on the 19th of June. So we've focused our feedback on at a principles level, looking at the policy and the process rather than the specific detail of the impacts on Nelson. Essentially, these changes could have a significant impact on council should an event occur. Officers' concern is the reactive approach to the funding challenge in the Land Transport Fund. And we don't consider the development of this policy good practice. And we've got a draft government policy statement that talks about being much more proactive in our responses. And we think this policy change is very reactive and could create some unwanted churn from a policy, from a process development perspective. We understand councils will be making similar submissions, and some of the wording from our submission has come from the Tasman District Council draft. So councils have been working collectively on this. The identified savings to the National Land Transport Fund are relatively small, but if those events occur in a small number of councils, they could have a significant impact on those councils. In an environment where more of these events are occurring and a higher likelihood of these events, it seems counterintuitive to offer less funding for these events. The council could also consider with this submission whether it should go through from the mayor or whether or not it could be an officer's submission through the acting GM of infrastructure. Those are my introductory comments.
Thanks, Lyndon. Just a quick couple of questions from myself. The first is that we're in the middle of the process of reclaiming emergency costs from NZTA Whakakatahi in respect of, I understand, about $14 million of road construction works. is this policy, and many of those sums are not going to be finalised and actually paid out until the work is done and we've got the final numbers. Will this policy change retrospectively impact on any of the August 22 recoveries that we're expecting from the agency?
Through the chair, the implementation of the policy talks about the documentation changes coming to effect for the next financial year and the changes to the funding assistance rate coming into the subsequent year. So any claims we make in the second year of the 3-year program will be affected by this policy change.
And how financially significant is that? You know, we've budgeted on a bit over 90 million for our recovery works. We've set the $300 flood recovery charge on the basis of getting a net, effectively 30 million recovery. Is there any chance of the numbers of that changing as a consequence of the effect of this policy on claims that are made, from what I'm hearing you say, from financial year 26-27?
So through the chair, our intent in our current program is to do as much of that work in the first year of the program and to have as small a tail as possible into the second year of the program. So we're looking at doing as much as we can. I don't have the precise split into that final year, but we're trying to minimise that risk by spending doing that work next year rather than the following year when the policy change will kick in.
And can you give me a ballpark figure? Is that if you look at a repeat of the August 22 event, would you be able to estimate what percentage change or decline it would make in the contribution from government for roading transport works as a consequence of the change of policy? In other words, if this community was to experience another August 22 event, I'm taking from the submission we would get less, and my question is it a big deal? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 20% less funding from government to support the repair work from such an event?
So I don't have a precise number for that, but essentially the funding would move from 71% for the qualifying down to 61% for the qualifying.
So in rough terms, we're expecting a reclaim from the August 22 event of 14 million. A drop of 10% is it's the order of about 1.5 million, about 10%. Is that fair, or am I misunderstanding the complexities of the change in policy that's proposed?
Through the chair, the challenge is how the policy is applied in itself. It's much more complex than that. It works on an annual basis, so there's some criteria each year. So it sort of resets each year, which means that the number would be less than that because of that annual reset.
So the loss would be less than the 1.5 million that I'm suggesting?
Yeah.
Thank you for that detail. Any other questions from colleagues on the submission? Councillor Brand?
Thanks for clarifying that through the chair. Your comment just before about whether the submission comes from the group manager of infrastructure or from the mayor and council, why can't it be from both? Why can't there be 2 submissions, or does it only require 1?
I'm super relaxed. The simple question on that is, and I asked our ex-NZTA gamekeeper, now to poacher, is the submission more likely to be effective in the name of the mayor or the acting infrastructure manager? I'm super relaxed either way. I just want to have the most influence we can over NZTA policy. Do you have a view as to
through the chair? I think showing mayoral support for this would be the way to go.
On the basis of that, I shall sign, and it'll be up to the acting manager if he wishes to co-sign with me, as Councillor Brand suggests. Any further questions? I'll move the report from the chair if there's a second of that course of action. Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Thank you, Lyndon, for the work that's done over quite a quick period in getting that piece of work done. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? That being the case, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. We now come to the next item on the agenda, which is with respect to the activities and public places consultation, and invite Michelle and Ailish before council. Welcome. Thank you for your work on the subject, of which has been a comment of quite a lot of discussion with councillors. Look forward to you presenting the report, and then we'll take questions from colleagues before we move into resolution. In your hands, Mandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just comment that this report and attachments has had legal review, just for your information, and I'll hand over to Michelle.
Thank you, Mandy. So just a quick introduction, but we're here today with a request to approve public consultation on these 3 proposals that relate to activities in the city centre, and you'll see the proposed commercial occupation policy along with the proposed fee schedule and then proposed amendments to the urban environments bylaw. And we're also requesting that council create a panel of elected members to look after the hearings and deliberations process following consultation.
Just following on from that, could I just inform councillors that I asked for expressions of interest sitting on this panel. They were Councillor Sanson, Stallard, Benge and Rollo. But when we worked on the dates, didn't work with Councillor Sanson's diary. My recommendation to council will be that the panel is made up of Councillor Stallard, Councillor Benge and Councillor Rollo. And because Councillor Stallard has completed the good decision-making process, it's not required, but I think is an advantage. And so my recommendation to council will be that Councillor Stallard be the chair. That'll be for discussion later. It's just that the appointment of councillors to these roles does sit with the governance body. Back to you.
Thank you. There are no corrections or anything, so we are happy to take the report as read.
Okay, questions? This is an important issue of which there will be community engagement, and I also think we need to consider it in the context that our city retailers particularly and hospitality sector are having a difficult time, and we want to develop this policy in a way that supports our broader objectives of revitalisation of the city. Councillor Sanson.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, through the chair. In Councillor Anderson's absence, he sent through question me to ask. I'm just trying to kind of, I'm not sure if it relates to the item numbered, but anyway, the question from Councillor Anderson was, are the Bill of Rights implications still consistent if human beings are not going from sleeping on the street to social services where they are housed, but in fact result in sleeping rough somewhere that is even more dangerous? So I guess he's raising his concerns about the bill, that the proposed changes might be forcing people into more unsafe places.
Mandy touched on the legal advice that had been received about the draft bylaw, and look forward to your response to the question that's been raised.
So through the chair, the bylaws provisions have to have seen an issue that concerns public health or nuisance or safety that needs addressing in public places, and we've had that legal scrutiny. It's in the bylaw at the moment, so we're just carrying forward the same provision. So it's been scrutinised a couple of times.
Councillor Skinner.
Chair, thank you. And please let me know if I've missed it on that. So we're re-looking at sandwich boards. Is that what I'm?
Through the chair, this was something that came through as direction from the last workshop that we had. And so it's included there in the report as options for council to consider today.
You must be tired of doing sandwich boards. term after term after term. It's like pet cremation; it just keeps giving. What else? The other one is with you're simplifying it. I see you're doing a tiered approach when it comes to the rental space. I think it's on those footpath stalls. And I understand you have based on commercial rates for commercial buildings, but it must be difficult trying to work a rate out for various other individual stall holders, etc. So my question is, does that not work well already, where you've got a more tailored situation rather than a one A or B tier?
Through the chair. So at the moment, it is quite a complex system that was based on market values through a previous report, the valuation report, and it's also based on location, size, and light and shade. So this is a more transparent structure that for license holders. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
okay, and thank you for that, because I appreciate the difficulty in the report you've got here. With the various stall holders, etc., they may not fit within. I don't know what the tier amounts are or what individual stall holders pay, but they may or may not fit in those tiers. So I guess some will either go up or some will go down. Or will you think those two tiers will probably fit the gamut well? They're going to be some losers and winners.
So through the chair, yes, there'll be a little bit of variation in what they're paying now. So some will go up slightly and some will go down and some will stay at a relatively similar amount.
Is it, without having to acknowledge what the amounts are, etc., is it going to be quite a shock for some, or is it going to be pretty much business as usual with a slight tweak?
I think there will be some that will go up in price. So it depends how they react to that. But yeah, there'll be some that are very similar. And then with the proposed, there's a proposed rebate for 24-25. So that will also kind of bring down that price for that financial year.
Thank you for that. Just trying to get a handle without getting into the nitty gritty, but just always conscious when we through the chair, always look conscious when we do be sandwich boards of this. It might seem simplifying, but there can then make some complications and it becomes a headache, not just for you guys, but for us as we try to make something working reasonably well, not breaking it. So that's just what just highlighting my concerns, but I appreciate you're still tailoring it very much to like saying shade, etc., or where the market is at, winter and summer. Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
A quick question on the rebate. The very supportive of the $25 per square metre rebate. We all know how tough it is for retailers. My question is, none of us know for sure where the economy is going to be this time next year. We're providing the rebate for a single year. How complex is the process if the council got to June next year and the economy hadn't recovered and we wanted to extend that rebate for a further year? Does it require public consultation? Is it a reasonably easy process? It's not to criticise in any way the paper, it's just you've always got that uncertainty as to where the economy is going to go in future.
So through the chair, we're proposing that if you wish to extend it, it just goes through a council resolution. So it's a relatively simple.
It doesn't require a full redo of the law of what we had here in the event that we decided to extend.
No.
Very helpful. I think I had Councillor Brand and then Councillor Sansom.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just on page 97 and 98 of the agenda where it talks about sandwich boards and buskers, does that change anything in relation to, well, I'll start with the buskers because that was the one I tend to get people commenting to me about. Does this, have we had an increase or decrease in a level of complaints about buskers or disruption by people who don't have permits of busking? And has that been tracked through the enforcement of anything that would create the change in here? Doesn't make it any harder or any easier for buskers?
Through the chair, we're not proposing to make any changes to the busking provisions in the bylaw. Only the bits that are underlined are proposed changes.
Yeah.
This review is a limited review and really focused mainly on those provisions that were covered under the city amenity bylaw and whether those provisions were still needed, as you know, looking at our service request system and so on to see whether the issues still exist.
Okay.
So the bylaw provisions in relation to busking have remained as they are.
Okay, because in the sandwich board, it talks about removing designated commercial area to city centre. So is that only then for the city centre? So like areas of historical Te Huna or other business commercial areas, they don't follow the same guidelines about the sandwich boards based on the changes?
Through the chair, so on page, I think it's your 43 and it's page 5 of the bylaw, the definitions are there, and you'll see that city centres includes places like, it refers to the way places are described in our plan. So, for example, inner city centre, inner city fringe and suburban commercial, which means that Stoke and Te Huna would be included.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to highlight that because people would just say city centre back here and they don't read and as in depth as other people, and sometimes it just creates a level of confusion. So with businesses that are upstairs and have no street frontage, with the bits that's all being crossed out, do they still fall under the same as what they did prior with the NRMP?
Through the chair, so depending on what council decides today, this will, there are a few options proposed. Option 1 is to entirely remove all those provisions, which means that rules about sandwich boards will be dealt with under the plan. Option 2 is to include a line in the bylaw to say sandwich boards are prohibited except as allowed under the plan. So we would just include that wording there. And the third option is to leave it alone at this point and look at it again at a next review. So if option 1 or 2 were decided on today, that would be the rule for everyone, whether your business was on the ground floor or the upper floor.
That's right. I'm just going on previous submissions. As mentioned previously, sandwich board thing constantly comes up each term. And the businesses that were upstairs had quite a bit to explain and where they felt. And I just wanted to make sure that we weren't creating unnecessary, I want to say drama, but it's not quite the right word, to move forward. But thank you.
Councillor Sanson, then I'll go Councillor Campbell, then Pakipaki.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, through the chair. Kia ora koutou. Just in regards to the options presented to us, so on page 55 around the wording of the sandwich boards, option 1 and option 2, it seems to me from reading the report that the outcome is the same. And so I'm just curious as to whether there's a staff view on which is kind of maybe clearer to the community. So obviously if option 2, where it has the wording, referring back to the plan, or option 1 where it removes it altogether, is there a kind of, is there a staff view on which one would be preferred?
Through the chair, yes, so the outcome of option 1 and 2 are the same. It is a council decision which option they would like to consult on. Option 2 makes it clear for anyone who goes to the bylaw, who's used to finding the rules in the bylaw, that the rules are no longer here and that they are in the plan. So I think it adds to clarity.
Okay, so I'm just signalling that I'm happy to move the recommendations with option 2 for item 7.
we will get to that further. We've had questions, and as part of that, and I'll come to my questions after colleagues, I'm interested in the process question of what degree the panel will have the opportunity to make changes and what's the best way in which to conduct the consultation. But I'll come to that after colleagues. Next is Councillor Pakipaki.
Thanks. I've heard from other councils around New Zealand, so not Nelson, that we bring these rules in, such as the removal of sandwich boards, but then the council doesn't actually police that rule. What's the staffing capacity like if such bylaw was to happen? Would this be something we look to police and give infringements if needed, or is it simply just going to be a bylaw that we have and hope that people follow?
Through the chair, so what we're doing today is just deciding on consultation. So there'll be the consultation process, which hopefully will bring these proposals to people's attention. But if the bylaw changes, for example, in respect of sandwich boards, part of our comms plan is then to educate people about that change and make sure businesses are aware. So initially, that would be the first step, and that fits with our compliance strategy as well in terms of making sure that people are educated and understand and aware of the rules. So we wouldn't be out there on day one handing out infringement notices, and certainly we would speak to businesses first, but ultimately there is the option then to take enforcement steps.
Councillor Pakipaki.
Tēnā koe. Licensing cycle. Item 5.2.3. Is a licensing cycle, is that a licensing cycle of 3 years or for 3 years? Do we cycle this every 3 years? I know it sounds like it's leading to something else. Is it cycled every 3 years, done on a triennial basis, or is it like alignment with the elections, or is it just on a case by case? It's for the commercial licenses.
So through the chair, it's the long-term plan cycle. So every 3 years we'll reset the fees in line with the long-term plan budgets.
Okay, cool. And we're just looking at as well in terms of the application with the is there, so I'm just also trying to, there was something I read about granting a license, commercial license for 3 years. Is that applied, is that renewed every year through like a subscription? The license is granted and then it's paid each year, or is it you pay the one lump sum to get a 3-year license of occupation?
So through the chair, it's done on an annual basis, but the license holders can discuss payment options with council after that. So,
right. So that actually invokes the next part, which was if a business so determined that they would have 3 years, they purchased a license. So and do they pay that annual fee each year, or is that, and if they negotiate to do it for a 3-year license occupation, is that paid for in one lump sum? Can it be?
I think you might have to defer to Rebecca, but I think it's annual.
Okay, well then that cancels out the next question. So thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you. Next question, I think. But that's right, Councillor Hodgson.
Kia ora. In the officer's report, 5.25, which just addresses the provisions around sleeping in the city centre, it says, and I'm really supportive of the approach where it says where a person is homeless and is not protesting, council's first response will be engagement with the appropriate social services to try to locate alternative accommodation or solutions. My question is just, and it might be one for the chief executive as well, possibly. 10 years from now, we have a different CEO by any chance, or different staff members. Is this?
You mean 25?
Okay, 25 years from now. So I realised as I was saying that, not trying to say anything subtly. Yeah, 6 months from now, got a new sim. Is that strong enough to ensure that the approach is enduring, or does it need to be embedded in the bylaw itself or passed as a resolution of council?
Through the chair, I don't know. This has been the approach since the city amenity bylaw was first created, which was in 2018. So the approach has endured for this time, but also our compliance strategy, it sets out the steps that we would take in any situation. So we would never go first to enforcement steps. We'd always have that discussion, raising awareness, educating, warning. And also the Local Government Act is specific about how enforcement action can be taken. There's reasonableness built into that. But there are other, other provisions or other regulations that ensure council behaves in a reasonable way when we're considering enforcement.
I'll take the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Courtney.
Yeah, just a couple of subs on that around in the previous city amenity bylaw. Is my memory correct in that within that bylaw an explanatory note was actually added, and is that proposed to be removed? And could that be kept in?
Through the chair, you're correct, there was an explanatory note, and this is something that was looked at both of the workshops previously. And the reason for not including any notes is because there are no notes in the urban environment bylaw. Also, a note in a bylaw, it's not the same as a bylaw clause. It doesn't have the same weight. So whether the note appears in the bylaw or whether it appears in our procedures, which it already does, it's really of equal weight then.
On a similar vein, could I just ask a quick sub? As I read the changes in the bylaws, is it fair for me to assume this will give council greater capacity to be able to lawfully deal with people sleeping in the city centre? This will be more empowering to council officials than the current bylaw?
Through the chair, this is the same provision as what we had in the city amenity bylaw. It provides no greater powers than what council previously had. And the powers described in a bylaw are always going to be subject to the Local Government Act. Yes. And what that Act requires of council. As I mentioned before, the reasonableness, it would be high on the list.
Yes. So you're still subject to the Bill of Rights and those other more powerful statutory instruments than the bylaw. Understand that.
Yeah.
But your assessment is this won't make it any more difficult, or it won't make it any more easier. Is that the correct interpretation?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Just trying to understand how that balances. Councillor Hodgson.
Just to further this, I guess, is there any downside to embedding an approach within the bylaw itself? I'm thinking partly just for the support of staff as well. Like this sort of thing, it's a really sensitive topic, and it, you see in other instances, and it hits the news and that sort of thing. It would be nice to just have absolute confidence in the enduring nature of our approach.
Yeah, I'm a bit more nervous in the sense that what is in the bylaw becomes legally liable, and so Parliament in its lawmaking has been hesitant to introduce what are effectively practice guidelines and to differentiate between those. And so I'm a bit nervous of going down the road you suggest, Councillor Hodgson. Mel.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, and through to Michelle, and thank you for this report. I've enjoyed it. I tell you what really sets the tone for me, and the tone is the important one here. 5, discussion, 5.1, commercial occupation policy. encouraging individuals and businesses to set up outdoor dining, street stores and markets will help deliver a council's priorities to transform our city and commercial centres to be thriving, and away it goes. And it's just a lovely tone. Now, my question is around the licence fees. Have you considered a different rate for the winter period? Please.
So through the chair, we have, and that's covered under 5 point.
I was struggling to find it.
So sorry, it is.
Yes,
5.8. So we are proposing to have different rates in summer and winter, but because it's annualised, then it then can be up to the business how they wish to manage their payments. So 75% in summer and 25% in winter.
Good. That's not changed the rules previously.
No, this would be a change to yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Benge, then Councillor Stallard.
Thank you. 5.27. I wrote this down very late at night and I've been struggling to find this. I just found it. About washing a car. So you're not allowed to wash your car in public. Is that what you're saying here? But can you wash a car on a hard surface out of public land?
Apologies, through the chair, I'm just struggling to find the reference.
5.27.
In the bylaw, yeah.
It's the same as what it is.
You're not allowed to do it in a way that is unsafe or intimidates or causes a nuisance or the obstruction of traffic.
So that's your out bench.
Well, it's just I see people doing this, sometimes in their driveway, sometimes on the road, and sometimes you can't see the car for foam, and then it goes straight down the drain. And I think that's appalling. So what? But this is saying you can do whatever you like as long as it's not in public.
No, it's saying that
on public land.
You can do it, but you're not allowed to be unsafe. You're not allowed to intimidate. You're not allowed to cause nuisance, and you're not allowed to cause.
Okay, then covering your car in suds and flushing it down the drain, is that unsafe?
So that is a different matter. That's pollution. So that shouldn't have detergents or anything going through our stormwater drains. So that's a different matter. But this one, if you remember back, there used to be people that used to offer to wash your windscreens for that was brought in for that. So this isn't proposed to change. This is
status quo.
Status quo.
So this is to stop people at traffic lights washing a window.
That's what that provision was brought in to deal with for if my memory serves me correctly, but quite some years ago.
So is a person washing their car and then washing it into the stormwater system, is that legal?
So through the chair, no, a discharge of contaminants to our stormwater is not permitted.
And that would include washing your car with a whole heap of product. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stallard.
Thanks, Nick. Just a procedural question. I know most of the motions before us are around just approving for consultation and so on. The three councillors who have proposed might be on the panel. Should we step back from voting on any of these motions, or is that all fine?
I'll just get Mandy's advice on that. For members of the panel that are going to be considering submissions on these issues, is it appropriate for them to be voting on the resolutions today?
So through the chair, it's fine because this just requests that this goes out to public for their consideration and submissions. So that's fine.
I think the only thing that I would advise is in today's debate on it, just make sure that their comments indicate an open mind on any of the issues rather than taking too fixed a position, would be my advice just as a common sense perspective, Aaron. Councillor Rollo?
Thanks, Mayor Nick. I just wanted to clarify. It's 8.5 on page 106. It's about golf, and it says no person should practice or play golf in any reserve other than the golf course up the Maitai. How come the Nelson Golf Course hasn't been considered in that?
Through the chair, we're focusing only on the bits that are underlined today. So none of the other clauses in the urban environment bylaw were looked at as part of this review. So those points can go on a list for the next full review of the urban environment bylaw.
But just on that note, the Nelson Golf Course is a private golf club, and we only make bylaws for public areas.
I'm just going to have to watch the Deputy Mayor. He wants to ban golfing in all parts of the city, which would cause great disruption with the Deputy Mayor. He's trying to upset the Mayor. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, the Deputy Mayor, and then back to Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah, a few questions, getting a bit more technical into the bylaw itself. First question is just around a definition for city centres. And when we are zoning, is road reserve considered zoned? I'm just looking at our e-plan, and there's the zones don't come across the roads, but I assume that is covered.
Yes, that's correct. So our roads are zoned, and if you don't see a zone, what the zones, like if there's two zones on either side of the road, they meet halfway down the road.
Our definition of occupy is just saying that it's not an activity that is allowed. My questioning here is around our provision of prohibiting sleeping or otherwise occupying land space in the city centre for more than 2 hours. We don't positively define occupy within the bylaw currently. Is that a problem?
Through the chair, we initially looked at finding a definition that, positively explained what occupy meant, but we couldn't find one in existing legislation that suited the purposes. And so when you write a definition like that, it's better to use one that already exists in legislation, and where there is no definition, the word takes its usual meaning.
So what do officers take to be the usual meaning of occupy?
Through the chair, I would say to fill up a space would be my stab at it.
I guess my concern is in regulating here is that as someone who has on occasion sat in Upper Trafalgar Street eating a cheeseburger and talking to people in the hours of darkness for probably a comfortable 2 hours, I think we need to be clear as to whether that is considered occupation. If I brought a blanket from home and did that, I just want to make sure that we're really clear in terms of our definitions here, especially as it interacts with, this is probably the key interface with NZ Bora as well in this space as well.
Yes, so through the chair, I think the key thing here is the whole context of that clause. And, if somebody's lying in a sleeping bag on the footpath, they may not actually be sleeping, but they could be awake, but they still probably shouldn't be there.
Correct.
According to the bylaw.
And I hate to labour the point, but I guess this is really where we're going to see the sort of the fringe use cases of if the Aurora, as it was on as a city centre resident, if I'd taken my sleeping bag out into the street at night to sit and watch, admittedly the lights would have made that a difficult experience, but I want to make sure from a staffing perspective that there is confidence in this regulation and that we're not unnecessarily impinging on city centre or residents whilst achieving the sort of stated outcomes of the bylaw?
I'll answer that question. I think, look, this gives me the sleeping issue was a problem because you may not be sleeping, so occupying was a good, I think, a good resolution of this. But I'm more than happy to move you on after 2 hours, Deputy Mayor. But but in all,
you can delegate that time to the mayor.
in all seriousness, it's a judgment call that I need to take on a daily basis with these things, and I interpret. But I think this gives me that relevant interpretation of what we want in the city and what we and of course I will sometimes turn a blind eye after things, but certainly you sitting eating a hamburger for more than 2 hours, I will not be turning a blind eye to that one.
I just think while the Deputy Mayor's questions in this area is the council did some years ago get into a great deal of difficulty with incident of a continuous occupier of the city area. And so we're going to try and navigate this line of giving our council sufficient powers to deal with things. In the 2 hours, to me, it would be pretty unusual for someone to continuously occupy an area for more than 2 hours. It seems a common sense definition. If we make it too hard and too legalistic, we are effectively going to undermine the capacity of our council officials to be able to deal with permanent occupation and sleepers in the central city. I have to say, when I see that developing in other cities around the world, you can really do lasting damage. We're doing good work as a council on the other side of intervening to make sure we provide options. And so I think this has got itself into as good a space as we can.
So through the Chair, just to add to that, when officers enforce, they consider the purpose of the thing they're enforcing in the first place, and that would lead to a decision whether to enforce or not.
Councillor Hodgson.
My question is coming back to the sandwich boards now, mainly because I think it's really good that we talk about it at length, because if that helps us to avoid going out to consultation on another change for the business community in particular, that would be nice. So my question is, have we brought this out for consultation in the past, and has it been through a hearings process, and if so, when or how many times?
Through the Chair, yes, the sandwich board point was part of the previous review on the urban environment bylaw, which was in 2020, I believe, and the provisions you have there are what council decided upon at that point. I'm not sure, though, that the misalignment with the Nelson plan was picked up at that review. And so that's something that we really do need to bring to council's attention, which is why that's included in the report.
Follow up on Councillor Hodgson's question. You've presented council with three options that we're going to need to resolve around the question of sandwich boards. One is simply to remove the provisions in 5.18 and 5.19. The second one adds the words except to the extent allowed under the Nelson Resources Management Plan. In answer to an earlier question, you said it makes no practical effect as to the consequences of the two. Policy decisions rightly rest with the elected members. From a regulatory point of view, which is the better legal approach, that in option 1 or 2, if the intention is to remove our sandwich boards in the central city. In other words, if you're trying to keep a tidy legal case between the bylaw and the RM plan, which of options 1 and 2 are officers recommending? If the intent is to remove sandwich boards, would you prefer to have option 1 or option 2?
Option 2 is clear because it has been in the bylaw up all this time. Yeah.
And my second question, if council today decides to proceed with the bylaw without sandwich boards, i.e. them being removed, and there's a substantive response from the community that's opposed to that, the hearings panel does have the room to be able to reinstate the old sandwich board provisions. Is that correct?
Through the Chair, that's correct. So council consults on these proposals and then considers submissions on that proposal, which means that council can then make changes following that process
And my
on those submissions.
third question, has there been any indications of views from either Uniquely Nelson or the Nelson Tasman Chamber of Commerce as to their preference for the retention or the removal of sandwich boards?
I'm not aware of any comments that we've received to date from Uniquely Nelson or Chamber of Commerce. I know that our city development team have been out and about talking to some of the businesses, and there's probably a mixed response there. But I think through the consultation process, we will hear from those organisations.
If council proceeded with the removal of sandwich boards under the proposed bylaw, what date would they be required to be removed?
So our process at the minute is a month's worth of consultation, hearings in July, and then we'll bring back the final bylaw once that whole process has happened in September. So that's when the new bylaw will then take effect.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson.
Sorry, I'm getting myself confused now. I think the outcome of the 2020 consultation was to remove sandwich boards.
Through the chair, the outcome of the 2020 consultation resulted in the provisions that are currently in the bylaw, which allows sandwich boards with a bunch of criteria about where and what they need to look like, etc.
And so to stay consistent with that, we would be option 3 in the report.
Okay, other questions? I saw Councillor Benj.
The Deputy Mayor's further to what he was saying about occupation. Does occupation include, does that jurisdiction include water? Does include the sea?
Through the chairs, so the bylaw covers only a certain area of our city centre.
Okay.
And so that particular provision is only city centre, so Nelson City Centre, Stoke to Hunanui.
And the second question, how does this bylaw affect the Saturday market?
So in terms of the commercial occupation policy, it's exempt and it has a separate arrangement.
Yeah, and I can just add in terms of the bylaw, the Saturday market has a licence to use that area.
A number of the markets have sandwich boards. If we pass the bylaw prohibiting sandwich boards, does that mean that sandwich boards would not be allowed within the area of the Nelson market on Saturdays?
We would probably need to check the lease arrangements or the license arrangements with the market, but my initial feeling would be that the sandwich boards would still be allowed within the market on a Saturday.
Thank you.
It was my understanding that it was exempt from this, but the owner of the market is paranoid about this. Look at the laws, because yeah, she just is. But you've confirmed what I thought was the case. Thank you.
This may sound a silly question, and I declare a vested interest. When we do a number of events in the city, we have Nelson City Council flags, a pole that sits and a flag that flags it to advertise presence of Nelson City Council. For instance, when myself and councillors have our present, even though it's at the Saturday market, legally it's outside the area of the market. If the council has a stall in the top end of Trafalgar Street, does the flag with a stand sit within the definition of a sandwich board?
I'm afraid it does.
But under the NRMP, that is permitted for council to have signs for community information or signs erected on behalf of council.
I won't be having the mayor arrested then on this occasion.
He'll find some bylaw which can get me on something, I assure you. All right. You'll help, yes, I know you would, Councillor Bench. That's what worries me. Councillor Skinner.
Well, thank you for your hard work. I'll just quickly take this opportunity because there's a lot of roadworks and stuff happening, which needs to be with that development just out here by Westpac Bank. So if you haven't already, I'm sure you're looking up them, those businesses, and some of those tucked behind are lacking that through traffic and would like to have a sandwich board or so put on the Trafalgar Street just to some counter that loss of walking traffic that they're getting.
So through the chair, should you decide to remove sandwich boards from the bylaw and just rely on the NRMP, they could apply for a resource consent to have a off-site sign.
But Mandy, can we just be a little practical? Because look, we're under difficulty and under pressure with the impact on retailers at the moment in the Victory area over the roadworks, which is featured in this week's newspaper. We're going to have a real challenge, and with what's going on in Whakatu Square right now, retailers concerned. What would be the expense? Do we say that people can apply for a resource consent for a sandwich board? Let's say we're doing roadworks and I want to put a sandwich board and say, here's to go to my kebab store or my retail store, a sandwich board with a direction as to how to get them around the roadworks. Would that require resource consent?
Under the NRMP, yes, but it could be a simple, quick.
What would be
process.
the fee that the regulatory department would charge me for a temporary sandwich board in the case of roadworks?
I don't have a figure off the top of my head, but we do have a category of very minor consent processes, and I'm sure that would fit within that.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to do, if there are no further questions, here's the way I thought I would handle the options. When we return, we've effectively got the choices in clause 7 around what we do with the sandwich boards. My view is, having had the officer's advice that there is no practical difference between option 1 and option 2, it's just how it's legally framed, and it's better framed as 2, I think there are really 2 options. My intention, as has been my practice in the past, is allow us to have a debate. And Councillor Sanson, you indicated previously that you would like to move that option. And so my intention would be to allow debate specifically on the question of the sandwich boards, then to have a vote or a show of hands on that, and then to deal with the substantive report. But my intention is to take a 5-minute break before then. If anybody would like to discuss with me over the 5-minute break how I handle that discussion, would be more than happy to get guidance. Just want to have a good, fair process by which we can
So just to clarify, I will move, I think it's 7, option 2.
Yes.
And
I want to have a separate debate specifically on that
we'll have
issue.
a separate vote on that. Yeah,
Correct.
that's fine.
That is my intention. Council is adjourned. We resume at 11:40.
Thanks, Nick, through the chair. I think I've got two questions and then James might have one. Mine's around the sandwich boards. I understand that the last time we consulted on this, we didn't consult on the removal of sandwich boards and signs. Is that correct?
That is my recollection. I wasn't part of the team who undertook that, but from what I recall, the last consultation was about the details around sandwich boards, so how many and where they should be and the design and so forth.
And my recollection from that is that we got submissions from, various blind, low vision mobility groups asking us to remove the sandwich boards, but because we hadn't consulted on that, we couldn't really consider that as an option. Is there an officer recollection of that or?
I would need to double check the submissions. I can't recall the content, but it is correct to say that council can't make changes unless it's something that was part of the consultation.
And then finally, just that if we adopted option 2 to remove them from the bylaw, it would then be consistent with the NRMP, the plan, and also with the other document. I think it's Te Ara Whakatū or the other planning document we've adopted.
Yes, that's correct. Option 2 would align the bylaw with the Nelson Resource Management Plan and then also aligns with our other strategies that are mentioned in the report, for example, the spatial plan.
Thanks.
And can I just check, we don't have the option to go out and consult on both options B and C, do we? We have to make a call at this point as to what our preferred option is.
If option C was the choice, there would be no consultation because that results in no change to the bylaw.
Can I ask the other way? If council options for C, we go out and we consult, there are substantive submissions that say we want to get rid of the boards, sandwich boards. Can the panel make a decision to remove the panel board provisions and revert to B?
Through the chair, I may be misunderstanding the question, but option C there, which is not to propose any amendment.
Correct, but I'm saying if we go with C and there are a substantive number of submissions that says we'd like to get rid of sandwich boards, does the panel have the authority to be able to remove the provisions around sandwich boards?
The changes that council can make must be part of what's proposed, and then depending on the submissions that come through, council can then make changes. It would be difficult to frame a proposal around status quo and the reasons why one would consult on that.
Right. Okay, any other questions?
James,
did you have a further question on the sandwich board question?
No, here's that on another minute.
I'd like to just send an amendment through to Robin for later.
So what I want to do is I want to I want to resolve the issue around the sandwich boards. And I'm going to allow Councillor Sanson to move the resolution 7B, and then I'm going to allow councillors to debate 7B. The assumption will be that if 7B is lost, then we will resort to 7C when we deal with the substantive resolutions on these items. The Deputy Mayor.
I did just have one more question. Which was...
I'll indulge him because he's the deputy.
Which was in relation to both the begging and sleeping aspects of this bylaw. Obviously, we've had them in place. I'm just wondering whether, if in the review process, council officers looked at the advice and the process that had occurred in Tauranga, where a similar bylaw was proposed, challenged and later revoked.
Through the chair, can I just check, do you mean the requirements around begging?
Begging and sleeping.
So the begging provision we did look at as part of this review, and in the original bylaw, the begging provisions applied to the whole of the Nelson area, so everywhere. That's now been limited to just the city centres. And as a result, the restrictions that it imposes are seen as reasonable.
Okay. Thank you again for the answers to the questions. The floor is now Councillor Sanson to move Amendment 7B.
Thanks. Happy to move Amendment 7B. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Councillor Rainey.
And shall I debate?
Yes.
I'll also I'll also do closing debate probably as well. Thanks. So last time we consulted on this, which was actually just last term, we didn't go out with the option of removing signs, sandwich boards in public space. However, through that consultation, we had a number of submissions from blind, low vision, from mobility groups, from people concerned about the encroachment of, business paraphernalia onto public space. However, because we hadn't consulted on it, our hands were tied and we couldn't do anything. Thus, we've ended up back here. And so this time we have an opportunity to simply ask the question, to go out to the community and hear from them. We're not making a decision today. We are simply going out for consultation. I think when we think about this issue, it's really easy for us to kind of preference the needs of businesses. I know that they are a key part of our fabric, economic fabric, but obviously, of course, the vitality of the city centre. However, we have to remember that the footpaths is the only public space we have. Like, if you did a map of all of the CBD, you obviously have commercial space, then we have road spaces that we can't use for public space. It's very difficult for people to move around. So the footpaths are the only public space we have, and I think it's really important that we preserve that space for people who want to get around the city and enjoy the space. So that they're not impacted by signs in their faces, tripping them over. When you've got people on mobility scooters, if you've got parents with prams, grandparents with prams, these kinds of signs. Some businesses sometimes have 5 signs. It makes it really difficult for people to navigate the space. So I just think it's worth us asking the community for their views, and then we delegate to the hearing panel, which I'm not on, and they then get to, assess the views of the community and make a recommendation back to council. So I'd really encourage elected members to support this, and also to remember that going out with this consultation would actually bring this bylaw into alignment with our plan and into alignment with other strategies and plans that we have for city centre. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sanson. Councillor Rainey, do you want to exercise your right as a seconder to speak now? Or?
No, I just want to go to sleep.
Thank you, Councillor Rainey. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. Are we trying to kill businesses by 1,000 cuts? Are we protecting the footpath, or are we protecting the businesses? And as much as some may think they're an eyesore or an obstruction, the footpath works very well. We've been through this process before. This is a case of, please understand how businesses in town operate, and it's bread and butter to be in town there, and having a sandwich board or sign directing people to their product is what creates that vitality, and it creates the ability for them to make a living. Us thinking that we know what's best is a little bit arrogant, I'd say, and we should be asking the businesses. I know we do, but they haven't come to us saying, hey, we'd rather not have sandwich boards. quite the opposite. I think our rules work very well in the way that we allocate and where you can and can't, and they're adhered to very well. But this idea that, oh, we've got to take the footpaths back, or the signs of obstruction, etc., businesses come second. No, we've got that round the wrong way. If we don't have business, we won't have a footpath, and we won't have any sandwich boards. Thank you.
The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I've got no problem getting around our footpaths. I'm also an able-bodied, perfect vision young person. And that's the fundamental reason why we're having this discussion is previously, when we put this forward, as has been stated, it was just part of the wider bylaw. We didn't consult specifically on it, but we did receive feedback that said, actually, the status quo isn't working for a number of people, particularly our blind, low vision community, but also when you get into higher traffic on our footpaths, you've got a lot of people, you've got people on mobility scooters, people with visual impairments. Added obstacles are just that, added obstacles that actually aren't easy to navigate. So what the answer is, I think that's the point of consultation, is going, here's an option. We'll still have the ability to make a decision down the track once we've heard feedback. But if we keep it as the status quo, all we're saying is that we're not interested in the conversation, because if you don't go out with it as the option, then you can't later change it. And that's what happened last time this was consulted on. So I think this is a reasonable step. There'll be a range of views, I'm sure, from business owners as well. Plenty don't use sandwich boards. It's not a universal feature, but it is a conversation that we need to engage in. I think particularly when members of our community raise accessibility concerns, we have an obligation to engage with them and to hear those concerns and to respond to them. Whether the answer comes out of this that what we're going to do is we're going to actually more strictly regulate where sandwich boards are allowed, but go further and say they can only be on this side of the street, consistency being another key theme within that, and one of the key things that are raised. There's options here, but to say no now is to say, yes, you've come to us with our concerns, but frankly, we don't think they're worth even having a discussion about. And I don't think that that's acceptable governance.
Councillor Rainey?
I think you mean like I'm awake again. I think
it was such an invigorating speech from the Deputy Mayor. We've brought Councillor Rainey to life.
I think Councillor Skinner's a little misguided if he thinks this potential recommendation is an attack on business. Far from it. This gives us the opportunity to hear from businesses as to why they think sandwich boards might be a good idea. And I really do want to hear from the community, the business community, but I also want to hear from all of the community who use our footpaths. So I think this is a really good move to include this, because finally, as Councillor Sanson has pointed out, we do get a chance to hear from the community on this particularly interesting issue.
Councillor Pakipaki.
Kia ora. The word hypocrisy is one that I just want to wave that flag. We, in one sense, this morning, there was a voice there that said that we should consult the public. And here we are saying, no, we want to have outcomes. This is exactly what I was saying. When we manipulate the political and the electoral system to achieve the goals and the aims that we want ourselves. So, kia ora, let's go and see what the community thinks. There's a level of consistency with that avoids hypocrisy.
Councillor Hodgson.
I don't feel strongly about sandwich boards. I don't know how many of us do, but I know that there are people out there who do feel strongly about this, and we've heard from them. If we had gone out for consultation directly on this issue before, I would want to just put it to rest. I learned, particularly through Plan Change 29, that consultation is quite taxing on people, especially when it directly affects them and causes concern. However, we haven't brought this out to the community yet. That's what I've heard, so I'm happy to support this.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bench.
Mayor Nick, if I don't understand why C is crossed out, if that's the status quo, I mean, is there a choice here?
Yes, there is.
I mean, your A and B
were
the same, and you wanted to get rid of one. Why is C no longer an option?
Let me be clear with Council. Councillor Sanson, seconded by Councillor Rainey, has moved for 7B to be adopted. If this resolution is defeated, then 7C
then becomes what I'm going to include in the overall resolution on the report.
But if we're going to the public,
if you would like C, then you should vote against the resolution before council.
okay, so let's say Councillor Sanson's proposal goes through, then C is like sandwich boards are no longer an option. I mean, there isn't any consultation.
What council is determining here is its preferred position to go into the draft bylaw for public consultation, of which you will then be a panel to then hear those submissions and make a recommendation back to council. But I stress again, if resolution B is defeated, it is my intention that resolution C is what we will proceed with.
But if it's not defeated,
then
what are we consulting about? Because sandwich boards are gone.
No.
No, because what we're determining is what is our preferred draft bylaw. That bylaw is then going to be advertised and people can make submissions on it. And they could make submissions, we would like sandwich boards back, and then members of the panel will need to hear those views with an open mind and make a recommendation back.
Well, then I don't understand the rationale that Councillor Sanson put forward, which was that last time no sandwich boards was not an option, therefore it couldn't be one, which is the whole basis of, unless I understood wrong, it was the basis for this being proposed, was that last time no sandwich boards wasn't an option, therefore it couldn't be an option through consultation. So haven't we just done the reverse?
It's a little bit unusual to take questions at this part of the process, but I actually
don't understand.
I do, and I want councillors to be able to understand. What I would like is Mandy to just address this very specific question that even in my own mind I need a direct answer, and that is, if council includes the status quo and the bylaw that is referred to the panel under option C, if there are submissions to remove sandwich boards, can the panel still consider that? It's really just a yes or no.
Let me just make it clear in my head too. So the option C is not to propose any changes.
That's right.
To
So we'll
the
be going
sandwich
out to
board.
consult on the existing bylaw.
Yeah. So we're consulting on the changes made to the bylaw. If somebody raised something about something that we're not proposing to change, then we can't consider that because other people haven't had that opportunity to.
I concur with that. This is where we fell foul last time. We didn't consult. We didn't give them that option. Therefore, if we want to consult on this one way or another, we need to put that in as an option.
That's right. I just want to be clear for councillor. So that's what I understood the answers to be.
I thought we were striking A and B and C would stay there, which gives people something to consult on. But if we take out both the other options, there's nothing to consult on.
I think I can be quite clear, and I'll get a dirty look from either Mandy or a kick under the table from the Chief Executive if I get it wrong. If council votes for going out to consult on 7B, then the option of retaining sandwich boards could be made by the panel if there was submissions against it. Now, if the option that's been moved by Councillor Sanson is lost and we revert to C, then we are not consulting on any change with respect to sandwich boards, and the panel, even if it wished and received submissions, could not make change.
Well, you've indulged me. I'm going to keep it going a little bit. Why aren't we going out for consultation on B and C? Surely that gives people something to consult on. Whereas we go out with just one,
sure, but
we're not giving them the option. And I understand that was the problem last time.
I asked that question of officers, and I'm happy to put it back to Mandy, that my understanding is that the legal process requires us to go out and consult on our preferred option.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So the law says we've got to go with our preferred option. And effectively, what you should be deciding between B and C is what is your preferred option. It's a bit like, can I give you an equivalent example, Matthew? When Parliament goes to consult on a bill,
The parliamentary process does not like you to go have a bill and say, well, you could do this or you do this. The government of the day has to propose a bill that says specifically what it wants. The public can then submit and say we don't like it, but the process does not allow you to put more than one option into a draft bylaw.
Okay, doesn't seem right to me, but anyway.
It is what it is, but I think we've got the clarity. Are there other contributions? I think I had Councillor Hodgson. No, I have. Councillor Paki he's contributed. I'm sorry, is there any other colleagues that wish to speak? That's all right. I've got myself confused on the chair as to further speakers. I'll just make a brief contribution myself. I am really worried about how tough it is out there for our commercial business and retailers. I think our small businesses, particularly in the central city, are facing the toughest winter that they will have had in decades. And while this is only a small change, it is a change that chips away at their business and their confidence. The difficulty is that often when you're walking down the footpath, you can't necessarily see the businesses that are perpendicular to you on the street, particularly for those businesses that are upstairs, and the existing bylaw limits them to one sandwich board. So I have nervousness about making change at this time.
I think that's a little misleading. We're not suggesting making a change. We're just suggesting going out with a draft bylaw.
I think that's a debating. I think that is a debating point, Pete. And let me finish, and I'll.
Well, but you just explained at some length to Councillor Benj that we're just putting in place a process by which we can give consideration to submission on a draft bylaw. We haven't made a decision on the draft bylaw.
I think that is debatable, but I think you should also let me finish my contribution.
Please, can I make this very clear? We are not making a decision on a bylaw.
We are making a decision on
a draft bylaw.
But that is, Pete, can I give you an analogy? When Parliament introduces a bill...
Raised as a point of order. So Rohan, you need to make a decision on the point of order.
So my view is that it is a debating.
It is raised as a point of order.
I can call for further contribution from you, Manik, should I need it to make a judgment on this. Understanding orders, and Robin, please stare at me if I've got this wrong, is that misleading is not a point of order, misrepresentation would be. But misrepresentation of what an officer or an elected member has said, I don't know that this would qualify as misrepresentation. However, as I do love to do, I'll chastise everyone and say, we've been doing this for more than an hour talking about sandwich boards. Some good amounts of collegiality will help keep the number of point of orders down. And I just recommend we all recognise the collaborative spirit in which we do governance around this table, and I'd hope that's reflected in people's remarks. So I will not be upholding that point of order.
So my point is, tough time for business. What we're effectively deciding here today is what is our preferred bylaw and going out and consulting on it. And people can minimise the extent of the decision when you're making a decision on a preferred bylaw. It's actually no difference to the decision that is made by Parliament when it introduces a bill to Parliament. It's saying here's our preferred law, and then you're opening up for submissions. Now, I am influenced by the argument that says that if we do not include the option of change, then it simply cannot be considered in the process going forward. And so I am going to consider option B, but I am going to ask the hearings panel to go into it with an open mind, because I am concerned about how tough it is for our businesses at the moment, and that I would not want our council to be unsympathetic to that level of pressure that those businesses are under, and that they keep an open mind about the options of a more restrictive approach as well as a removal of the sandwich boards. And so to go out and consult on the proposal, yes, but to do so with an element of reservation and concern because of the climate just being so tough for our small businesses at this time. Are there any further contributions? I'll now take Councillor Sanson to exercise your right of reply before we vote on 7B.
Thanks, Minik. I'll just wrap this up speedily. We have, if we support option B, we have option B and C effectively on the table because we always have option C as our fallback position, which is the status quo. So we are simply going out to hear views on option B. I think we need to be careful not to kind of assume that all businesses have the same view. And we heard from staff who've undertaken pre-engagement that some businesses are supportive of B, the removal of sandwich boards, and some are not. And so I think it's going to be really important for us to hear those views from businesses who are supportive or not, and also the wider community. I don't think this is at all a case of us thinking we know best. All we're simply doing is responding to submissions that we've had the last time we went out to consult on this, where our hands were tied, and then seeking the views of the community through a legitimate and robust consultation approach. And I trust my colleagues around the table, the hearings panel, that they will go into that process with an open mind, listen to the submissions, assess using an evidence-based approach the information that they hear, and then come up with a recommendation. So I thank the staff for their work on this and encourage elected members to support hearing community views. Thanks.
The resolution moved by Councillor Sanson, seconded by Councillor Rainey, is for us to adopt 7B. Those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
The contrary say no.
No.
I'm going to declare that carried. We now move to the substantive report of agenda items. Is someone now prepared to move resolutions 1 to 14? Thank you, Councillor Sanson. Is there a seconder for that?
Maybe James. There's an amendment, I think.
Yeah, I've got an amendment that I've forwarded.
I'd like to have the motion moved and seconded, and then we'll come to any further amendments.
I think, can we move it with the amendment or not? I'd like to move it with James's amendment, if that's, or James could move it with his amendment, and I'll second. Let's do that.
Can I just have, is someone prepared to second the recommendations 1 to 14 before I come to the amendment, please?
Minik, I think under standing orders, we have the ability to move with the amendment. So I'm going to defer to James, seeing it's his amendment, to enable him to move with the amendment, and I will second.
Happy to move with the amendment.
I haven't yet seen. Can we have contributions from those that wish to speak to the substantive resolutions?
So just to clarify, what they've done is they've made
I wish to ask questions as officers as to what the legal implications of what is being proposed. Mandy, what is the implication of, the bit I'm uncomfortable about is whether it be laws or bylaws, is including practice notes within them as notes as intended. Is this the norm, and what would this mean for enforcement?
So through the chair, it is not the norm in the urban environments bylaw to have a note. So this would be the only one in that bylaw.
What is the legal implication of including a note within the bylaw? Does it mean if someone was legally challenging the application of the bylaw that they would need to include compliance with the issues contained in that officer report?
So the note can't have any legal weighting within the bylaw. But I guess it does open us up to additional challenge for having it there.
Right. That is my, I think it's bad lawmaking, either in Parliament or Council and its bylaws, to include practice notes within the bylaw. because you then are inviting the courts into getting in them. And that's what my concern is with the amendment. Councillor Benj?
You asked Mandy, and I'm not doubting her ability, but is Mandy, is there a legal eye being cast over this?
Through the chair, I'll just note that the bylaw in its current form is what's been checked. And so if we want to make some changes, we may need a break to run that past our legal team.
So no legal, this hasn't been looked at by a legal.
It is, can I ask a question of the officer? If we include that in the bylaw and the council attempts to enforce the bylaw, then it enables the court to see whether to interrogate whether the council did the action of appropriately responding to a social service agency and their referral and engagement. That's my nervousness, is that we are making the bylaw more difficult to enforce. Is that fair for me to conclude as a consequence of the resolution?
I believe that's correct, but if we want a definitive answer on that, we need to speak to our legal team.
I'm in a difficult position in the sense that I'm not sure council wants to adopt this without legal advice. How long would it take us to be able to get legal advice on this item?
I think Madeline is free today, so I can go and speak to her about this.
There's two ways forward. I could suggest from the chair, if there was consensus, that we ask our council officers to get legal advice on this question and for us to consider it the last item after confidential business today before making a decision. If council wish to proceed without legal advice, then I'm only one of 13 voices around this table. I'm uneasy about doing stuff without understanding the legal implications. My previous experience in lawmaking is that when you start including practice notes into your bylaws and laws, you do make enforcement more complicated. Councillor Sanson.
Just a quick question. Because this is just a consultation, is there the potential that the hearings panel could be presented with legal advice, which means there'd be heaps of time between now and then for that to be, the matter to be further understood?
The report today is for council to approve the consultation document. So consultation starts on Monday, is our timeline currently.
Chief Executive?
Yeah, we could do this subject to legal advice, or look, I'm relatively, like the Mayor, I'm a bit uncomfortable with putting a note into the bylaw. I do think I understand what you're trying to do at Councillor Hodgson with this guidance, because if I leave or other people leave, could we put this as a note in the minutes and make it quite clear that that was the intent, and that's not going into the bylaw? It's a possibility.
Whatever achieves what my intent is.
I think the key intent, and let me be quite explicit, is this. There is the expectations that we have of the Chief Executive in the enforcement of our bylaws. That is one issue. Do we wish the courts in enforcement of the bylaw to be able to interrogate and legally challenge a prosecution on the grounds of the additional items in the officer's report? That, in my view, is substantially the legal question for us. Councillor Benj?
I think we shouldn't be passing this without legal opinion, and that it should be passed by the council, not a hearing panel. It should be, considered by the full council, not a hearing panel.
Okay.
It's a matter of law. We shouldn't be mucking around.
I'm going to use a bit of discretion from the chair, if I may, and that is invite Councillor Hodgson as to whether he wishes to continue with the amendment. If the answer is yes, then it is my intention to defer this item to allow our officers to get legal advice and to deal with it as the last item of the agenda. Or the alternative is that it be withdrawn and considered by the panel.
Happy to consider it as the last item of the agenda.
Okay. So I'm going to move from the chair that this main item of the agenda, agenda item, oops, get myself clear. I'm just going to move from the chair that the item be adjourned until the last item of business. And Mr. Chief Executive, I'd like you to get some legal advice, either a person that doesn't have to be in writing, but some legal advice on the amendment that's been proposed by Councillor Hodgson. And if we could have that by the end of day. I'll move that from the chair. Is there a seconder for that? Doesn't there a second? I can just adjourn from the chair? Good as gold. All right, that concludes that item for now. We now move to items of confidential business.
I'll move that we go into confidential.
Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Courtney. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. We will just take a stretch the legs 2-minute break while we reorganise the Zoom and get Matty